Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Now how do I get back to muted?
I will mute you. This is Shannon, the moderator. You can click *6 to unmute.
Oh, okay. Thank you so much. It's Susan Welch.
Okay, thank you.
Hey guys.
Yo, Skippy. Hi, Skippy.
What's up, John?
Billman.
We're all in different rooms in the same building over here. It's weird.
I didn't get the memo. Damn it.
Okay. Hopefully next week we'll be in the same building.
I'm just really anxious to get into this building altogether.
Me three. Ready.
Is the meeting started?
The meeting has not began yet. If you could please mute your microphones. Thank you.
Ward, which room are you in? It looks like you have good light in there.
Copper Pass room.
Is that like out by the big glass over looking over Rio Grande?
Yeah, second floor, just down the hall from you.
No.
Mr. Mayor, just a little heads up for you. The internet into City Hall has gone out twice today. It's a citywide issue, so just letting you know if there's any trouble tonight, that could be what happens.
Ward, you're on mute.
Shannon.
I'm messing with your head.
Oh, really? That was very funny. That was well executed. Good stuff.
Tori's the only one in this building with any color in his background. Oh.
That's right. How do you
we
know
will get started in just looking for participants right now.
Do we have Rachel?
Not currently.
We expecting her though?
I thought so.
Okay. Maybe she's working up a super sweet backdrop. All the forest creatures.
All right, well, we're gonna go ahead and get the meeting underway. If GrassRoots is with us. And I think they are. So welcome everybody. This is the Aspen City Council work session for February 7th, 2022. Tonight on our agenda, we have got the Armory update and then a short conversation about the wildfires, disaster recovery funding, and victims resources. And then we have boards and commissions interviews, and those interviews are actually scheduled to start in about an hour. So we're going to want to try to get through these first two items as we can within that hour. I just wanted to say real quickly that, you know, this is tonight is a discussion really about Armory process and moving forward. We have received different materials, emails, and letters from people that are on the meeting call tonight. I just want to let you know that we have been in receipt of those. They go into the record. And we appreciate that so much. Tonight is not really a discussion about those exact proposals as they've been submitted to us. There will be an appropriate time for that, but I just wanted to let everybody know that we have been in receipt of those and we thank you very much for them. And with that, we'll go ahead and get started on our agenda, which starts off with City Facilities Remodel and Use Plan. And we have Jan and Scott joining us. I see Jen, so maybe she's going to introduce this item.
I am. Thank you, Mayor Tory. It's been a while, so I hope you can appreciate the fact that I'm a little maybe rusty on the digital meeting on this platform, but I'll do my best. Tonight, we'll be talking about the city's facilities remodel and reuse plan for the Armory and Old Powerhouse. I have a quick PowerPoint presentation. Rob Schober, the asset director, as well as Scott Millers, our public works director, are here also, who I've been working with on this. And let me get started with the PowerPoint presentation that I'm about to share. Okay, you can see just the PowerPoint, right? Yeah. All right. All right, so tonight this afternoon, we wanted to discuss at a high level. We're looking to get an initial direction on the use of the two city buildings and suggested public outreach process. So we want to get direction on those two items for the Armory and the Old Powerhouse. Just to go into a little bit of background, this was in the memo, but we also have people from the general public here. We've had, with the completion of the new city hall, we've had many, but not all departments relocate into the new city hall. Currently, the Armory is housing both IT and utility billing, but the balance of the building is vacant. And the city is working on an IGA agreement lease with Pitkin County through the fall, winter of 2022. And the purpose of that is to house the court system in the Armory during the remodel of the court building. As I mentioned, there's two city departments still in City Hall. We also have some other departments that are dispersed throughout the city. The asset department is currently in the Old Powerhouse along with ACRA. And we have transportation and special events at the Old Mountain Rescue Building on Main Street. Just a couple things on the lease agreement being developed with Pitkin County. The plan is to keep IT and utility billing in that space for the time being. They are leasing most of the building, but not all of it. So I just wanted to give you a little bit of background on that. And then when we're talking about the powerhouse and the current conditions there, ACRA is renting most of the ground floor from the city. And then Asset is currently on the second floor of that building. As you're probably aware, both buildings are designated historic resources. They were constructed in the late 1800s. The old powerhouse obviously functioned as a power plant, and then it became the Aspen Art Museum, and it now holds city offices in Accra. The Armory, when it was first built in the late 1880s, was providing a space. It provided space for military drills. It was an armory for the local, basically, militia. And then the second story, it was only a 2-story building at the time. The second story was used as a fraternal hall on that upper level. Over time, the Armory's had multiple uses. It's been lodge, club. We've seen it as a gymnasium. There were dances held out there. It was a roller rink at one time. So there's been a lot of community use in that building. And in the 1950s, the police department moved into the building, and a little bit later, the rest of City Hall moved in, and it's been City Hall since the late 1950s. With the move this past year of those offices that were occupying the Armory into the new City Hall, we have the ability to plan for a new use for this building. Just a little bit of history also, when the planning for the new City Hall was going on, there were a number of ballot items, and one of them being in 2015, there was an advisory ballot question that narrowly passed, and it's what the council posed to the public was, should the Armory remain city offices or should it be a community use? And it passed narrowly to be a city use, a community use. So back in 2015, the voters suggested that it should be a community use. So what we are recommending, what staff's recommending, is that the old powerhouse be maintained for city operations, and that 4 departments be located in this building, and it would accommodate offices that are spread throughout town currently. So we'd be looking at IT relocating, assets staying in this building. We'd be looking at transportation and special events. And based on the master facilities plans and the numbers that we've been working with, the old powerhouse can accommodate those 4 offices and most of their storage needs. We've been working with Accra and discussing the possibility and Accra moving into the Armory downtown, which is a good location for the chamber. And it would, with them relocating to the Armory, it would benefit them with a downtown location. Their space needs are not for the entire building. The building, I believe, is about, I want to say 19,000 square feet. It was in my memo. And their needs are basically about, we're saying about approximately 4,400. So the balance of that space in the Armory could be used for potential additional uses. The question remains, though, what should those uses be in that building? And how do they work with Accra? You know, what are we trying to accomplish with this building, with the Armory? And so staff is suggesting that with the remainder of the Armory building, to look at how that should be essentially filled. that we'd solicit community ideas on the potential reuse of the building. And once we get through that engagement process, we'd regroup with council and determine the programming for the Armory. So we've come up with a draft engagement plan, but one of the things that we thought would be important for any type of engagement plan is how do we develop principles for what should go into the reuse of the Armory. And this is an initial list of basically guiding principles that, excuse me, that we thought could be used to help frame the discussion around what should be in the Armory in that unused space. I'll just quickly read through them. The initial thoughts are that the building remodel will incorporate sustainable systems showing a commitment to the environment. The Armory should be able to be used by a diverse range of people. The Armory, the uses within the Armory should provide meaningful and affordable participation in programs and offerings. The operational structure of the Armory should limit the public financial burden of operating and maintaining the building. The remodel will respect the historic context and contribute to Aspen's small town character. And the programming of the Armory should contribute to a lively and diverse downtown. And finally, the programming of the Armory should focus on unmet needs within the community. So we're thinking that this could be a start of a framework of principles to help guide the reuse of the building, and would be a backbone to the engagement process. And for the engagement process, staff is working with the communications department, and what we're looking at is a two-phase public engagement process. One is to really solicit ideas from the public, distill them, send them out again, and on that second phase of engagement, we'd be confirming the feedback that the city gathered and try and narrow down the uses that the community would like to see in that building. The outreach will include open houses in person or virtual, depending on where we are with COVID. Advertising, online surveys, and newsletters, amongst other types of engagement. And we're looking at a pretty, I'd say, assertive time frame. We're looking at, if we get direction from you this afternoon, we'd like to try and get the feedback wrapped up by the end of April, the engagement process. So what we'll be looking for tonight as part of this discussion is we're going to be looking for confirmation from council on the initial programming of the two buildings. We're looking to get confirmation that ACRO is moving into the Armory with a balance of that space being used for community purpose, and that the old powerhouse can house city offices. We're looking for agreement on the outreach timeline. It is a kind of quick turnaround. We're going to be efficient with this process, and we're trying to finish it by April so that we can come back to you in May and have a good discussion on what should happen with the Armory once we have good public feedback. We're also looking tonight to see what you think about the initial guiding principles that were developed. And if you think that's a good start, if there's other ones that you'd like to add, we have some time to get that firmed up, but we thought guiding principles to provide a framework for what should go into the Armory would be helpful. And this is very initial. Again, these are going to be discussions that we will have in a lot more depth later on, but some initial thoughts on, should the uses that go into the Armory primarily support locals or visitors or both, and what anyone's initial thoughts were on whether the Armory should stay a city facility or should it be and managed by the city, or it should be possibly a leased opportunity for another entity, although it would still be city owned. And knowing that you have some interviews scheduled at 5, I'm here to answer questions that you might have right now.
Thanks, Jen. Okay, I think it's pretty clear from the memo what Jen just outlined for us, what the ask of council is tonight, but I think there's some more unpacking to do, maybe some more questions as well. So let's get in, if we can, primarily with questions. Of course, share whatever you want, but primarily questions if you've got any right now. So I'm going to start with Rachel and then Ward. Rachel, go right ahead.
Yeah, thank you, and happy Monday, everybody.
Yay.
Happy Monday.
I'm kind of wondering a little more detail on how public facing the ACRA needs are versus how much is more office space that could be, 3rd floor or basement, particularly as a visitor center. And I'd like to see the activity and walking in and guests using that building that way. But will we still be maintaining a Wheeler Opera House Visitor Center, a block and a quarter away, as well as the Cooper Street, if we have the Armory? And so I'm kind of wondering that is what is our programming there? And then, just a kind of broader comment here real quick, but when we talk about community engagement, to me, we should be developing a bit of a list of potential opportunities, or looking around and having that list of what things our community is perhaps missing. But I think it's like asking people what they want for dinner and not giving them the menu of what's possible, and all they remember is the past 3 dishes that they had, versus perhaps some of the cool things other cities and communities are thinking about providing their people. And but that's my only real question right now is the ACRA. But on the engagement, I guess I really want to see some real facts, because you ask what we think about the premises going into this, and one of those is about maintaining relative low cost or cost efficiency in the building. But what are the costs? How do we even start to tell the public it will take $200,000 a year to heat it, maintain it, and capital improvements and clean it, or is that $120,000 a year? So whatever engagement we start having, I want to have as many facts around the building as possible. Thank you.
Jen, let's just catalog those for a second. I heard 3 things there: visitor center and ACRA's needs. All right, welcome back.
Whoop.
Yep. Let's give Rachel 1 second to.
And Mayor, we're trying to get GrassRoots connected. So that we're also having issues with that. So it'll be a minute.
All right, so we've got a minute to relax, folks.
Rachel looks like she's schizophrenic. I see two connections for her. Accra currently is occupying 2,475 square feet. Why do they need 4,400 square feet for their new offices? And that refers back to my preference to maximize the Armory for public use. Yeah, I agree with the aggressive timeline. I just wonder if that is too aggressive, but I'd like to move it along as much as possible. But I don't want to jeopardize the staff time for the moratorium and ordinance 27 and associated issues. So if it's different staff that is going to be addressing this, I'm fine with that. It is an aggressive timeline though. I think that covered what I had for my general notes. Let me just look through here. I do want to have as flexible programming as possible. I don't know how far ahead that I might be ahead of ourselves on this, but I think that I would prefer not having city council have to make final decisions on who gets what at what rate and for what period of time. I do want to look at subleasing terms for the Armory and look at cost recouping what the rental rates and utilities and building IQ and greening of the building. But interested in looking at how we can offload some of those choices to perhaps a board or a commission or a master lease situation where, but I don't want to lose control of the building. I don't want to burden the city council with having to decide which of all the spaces are going to be used for what and what they're going to be charged. I think that was the extent of my notes.
All right, thanks, Ward. We'll plenty more opportunity as well tonight. John.
Yeah, I'll try to keep this quick. Just a couple things I think we should consider. And these aren't really my opinion. I just wanted to point out that the ask of 4,400 square feet is nearly 25% of the whole building. Just consider that. And the other thing was when voters voted on whether community use or city offices, and they voted for the community, it was a pretty tight vote as I recall. Anyway, I guess my point is when the voters voted for it to be a community use, was Accra supposed to be part of the community use? And again, I'm with Ward and Rachel. I don't want to hold any of this up. I would like to see whatever programming goes into the building be controlled somehow by the city so we can keep rents low and have some local serving businesses and services. I'm just concerned that if we are locked into putting ACRA into the Armory, that would preclude some other brilliant ideas that we might happen along. Although again, that brings up the timeline. Anyway, for your consideration, thanks.
And can I just interject, just maybe to go back a little bit to Ward and John's point? We're looking really high level. The 4,400 actually came in the master facilities plan. It was just about that. We'd be looking at working with Accra on what their needs are and refining those numbers. And so it was just kind of a placeholder for this initial discussion, because you don't want to say they need less and come back asking for more, but it was based on a number in the master facilities workup, and we are expecting that it won't be that final number, that we will be working with them and refining that in the future, just so we don't hold on to one number as we move forward.
Okay. There were a couple other questions around that though, about the other visitor centers as well. And
yeah. Yeah. And there are differences, approximately the front of house is about 700 square feet. Back of the house is about 2,400 right now. We need to start thinking about circulation that adds square footage on for use. And then if there's any amenities that ACRA's thinking about using, such as bathrooms or anything like that. So, you know, right now we're kind of looking at what are their targeted needs and what does that look like. And we know that they'll be juggling around what eventually goes in that building and where.
Thanks, Jen. Rachel.
Yeah, thank you. Just to kind of throw a few other real comments in following others. On the old powerhouse, I can see, you know, using that as the offices as designated, but I have repeatedly requested, and I'd want to see it carried through here, that we have some sort of historical reference and more about what is the power plant. Why is it so revolutionary? Why was it copied in Kyoto, Japan? And we have almost nothing of that left or down there. And I've told others that I've visited Kyoto, Japan, and have seen their whole, you know, historical. They still have some of the bull wheels and this and that, and the history of how they brought the water over. And we've just not given that the historic treatment that it deserves, I believe, as a city property. So that's a key point for me. But the second thing is to mention, you know, what does it mean to use the lawn if those have become city offices? You know, in the past, we've had food and wine tents down there in the springtime. It's often a place that people were able to use for an outdoor wedding or a wedding reception on the lawn. There were children's groups that would come down and sit there for story hour. I want to have a better idea of how the city is going to utilize the lawn and the river frontage and things like that when we move forward on the powerhouse. So that's one kind of set of things. And then the other is, you know, as we've all said, I'm really interested in public use in that building. And, you know, I think there'll be a lot of ideas that will come forward, and we're going to have to pick and pan and match out which ones work, both space-wise and, you know, sometimes there's things that sound like a good idea, but it's really nothing the locals use or the visitors use and things like that. So it'll take a little sorting. But I have thought about the concept of what if you had a space that was available on a rotating basis for community nonprofits that were committing to man it and be there to talk about their work or their activities or things like that. So is any of the space potentially rotating space as opposed to permanent space? And I think for any of these things, there's going to be a discussion about lease terms. Do you want a lease that's 3 years so someone has enough time to really start? Do you want to have some sort of rotation or movement of types of vendors for excitement, so that would lead to perhaps shorter term leases in some spaces? So I want to talk about that a little bit. I'm absolutely there for this should be for the community, for the locals, and that tends to be what the visitor and guest enjoys anyhow when they find out what the locals are enjoying. So that should work well. And I really don't know quite how to phrase this, but the expression when we're thinking of missing elements, what are healthy community elements that we might be missing? What does a healthy community have at its heart that we might be missing? And you know, another thing, it might be valuable for this is to look at what we do have. You know, we have great events over at the fire district in the firehouse for certain times a year. We have art openings at the Red Brick. So, you know, when you stop to think about what we do have, it's not like we need a new ice skating rink in there, and probably not a roller skating rink, but we don't have a bowling alley. Yeah. So I'm kind of getting at, if you start thinking about what are the pieces that we do have either readily available, or we would be trying to kind of go into direct competition with someone else, what that helps us kind of see the gaps perhaps a little better, is to really take that, what is the complement of city offerings now for locals? And then it helps us see what's missing. Thank you.
I just want to say laundromat.
Bowling alley laundromat combo.
Yeah.
Sounds pretty awesome.
Wow.
Skippy, I want to get some comments, questions from you.
Put me on the fence about bowling laundry. I think it's a good start. I think it's a good start. You know, I'm in general agreement with moving forward for the remaining city needs at the powerhouse and consolidating them there. I was really happy Rachel brought up the use of the lawn. I think that's a really big deal to get right. That's a tremendous community asset. So, you know, I don't want to be losing over there to gain somewhere else. For the use of the Armory, I'm in agreement with everyone here, as much community use as is possible. You know, I think we should be thinking about, you know, Acra's portion, you know, again, I don't know if a visitor center is necessary. Could it be at the Wheeler? Could it be somewhere else to free up more space? I think we should be thinking about the location of Acra within that building with consideration for 24-hour access for whoever the tenant is, and also for Acra employees, so that, you know, if it's a whatever, like a hawker center food court thing, they don't have to change after skiing for work in the really busy bathroom, you know, that they have separate egresses and entrances and are respectful of both uses, I think will be really important. I think the guiding principles are great. Like, don't quibble with a single one of them. There may be more, there may be different priority from the community, but I think, you know, as general rules to start with, I think they're really well stated. The one area I think that we have opportunity for improvement or to level up is, I really love where you're going on public process and public inclusion. Clearly there's been very, not just vocal, but active citizen groups with ideas for this place. But honestly, Jen and crew, you know, what I'm hearing from people more than anything these days is really just a feeling of loss of sense of community. Whether that's people that have been here 30 years and can no longer afford to go to restaurants or shop and feel like they don't see each other anymore, or, you know, people who are new arrivals and say, like, I came here, this place seems awesome, but I haven't really met my people yet. Where do I go? There's, you know, I've got this business, but there's really no co-working space where I can make a call. Like, there's a lack of the commons in physical space, and a feeling of community. And so, you know, I think our opportunity with this public process is really to lean into that. You know, we use the word assertive in here a lot about the time frame, and I don't mean to if I'm misinterpreting how it was meant, but it does feel a bit like, when I read it, what I heard is, we get some ideas from the community, we do a thing as fast as we can, and then we give it to the community. And I think we should really think of the process as part of the benefit. Really give people an opportunity to take ownership of this, not just in, you know, ultimately, hopefully running it in more of a sort of co-op or leased model, but also the process of bringing it about. So, you know, rather than, you know, a community voice and we get 5 things and we talk about it and make a decision, you know, maybe it's more of like a pitch day type event, right? Where we do some initial screening and then people can pitch projects, not just to us, but to the community itself. And maybe we select sort of finalists, and then they have to come back and develop a program that includes build out, that includes, you know, decor art, that includes fundraising and operational costs, and really let them demonstrate that they can bring this to life and operate it, and really have people be part of that creation process and taking ownership. And then the act of building it actually becomes the thing we're seeking, which is a feeling of ownership in a place of community. So I think, you know, that's kind of my one guiding thought. And, you know, I don't expect the city to like go run a pitch day, but, you know, whether it's Co-Venture or Takal, there's organizations in the Valley that do this extremely well that maybe we could partner with as well.
Skippy, that sounds like a big departure from the proposal that is in front of you. And I want to give your idea and as much breathing room as possible. So I just want to put it back to you. Like, I don't want you to just have said everything you said and then it like just not be kind of heard or discussed. But what you just said was a very different process than what's in front of us. So if you want real consideration of that, I'd need to hear more about, like, what is your actual suggestion right there? You want to, because it sounds like it's part of the process that would start now.
Yeah, and I don't think it's a huge departure. It's certainly not an intention or goals or guiding principles, but process. It's one that's more involving and community led rather than city delivered. And so, I mean, have you guys been part of like a pitch day before?
Sure.
Sure. So,
And that's a whole nother conversation, because that scares the hell out of me, especially on this project. And I'll say it now because we're just having this conversation. But, one of the things that's concerned me about this is that we have had people spending their own private monies influencing the direction of this project. And that, so my initial reaction to what you're saying is like, I get the intention, but I just don't know that that's conducive in this situation. Anyway, I'm just having conversation with you because what you just said was definitely an elevated process or a different process, if you will. And I just want to be totally clear with you. Like, I don't know if that.
No, that's cool. And I mean, look, I read this 2-3 days ago and started thinking about it. So I think it's appropriate for us to work through it. What, when you say it scares the hell out of you, what's the fear?
Well, like I said, like I'm seeing, public efforts like the one that you just described. I'm seeing them in our community be lobbied for, paid for, and influenced by not a public process gone awry or gone the way of the dollar or whatever. So to me, I don't know. I'm just having conversation with you. I respect what you said, but I'm not sure I agree, and I don't want to dismiss it or not give it airtime just because I don't agree. So,
got it. Well, I think what I'm hearing you say, and anyone else jump in too, but so I think a discussion's good. I think what I'm hearing you say is if the process is community led or community decided, then there's the possibility for the process to be bought in some way by someone who's more highly resourced.
In part, that's part of it.
Got it.
Influence,
okay.
absolutely.
I think it's a fair concern. I mean, someone who has more money and probably then more time probably has a head start on making a case to the community. But they also bring benefits to the project that ultimately will help it be successful in the short term and long term. So, I think I would think of it as probably a 2-stage pitch process. Maybe we ask people to set together something really, really short that anyone could do, like a high schooler could do it on their own. And it's a 3-minute video or whatever. I mean, we figure out the exact thing, but something really brief that the community could kind of choose their top ones from. And then we would give them a broader set of criteria in terms of, operations, build out, like really to give us the whole plan of how they envision this operating and how to bring it forward. And then do like a bigger pitch day where they get, 20 minutes to pitch it to council and community. And we can choose to weight that decision, in any number of ways. And I think we could put some guardrails around what you're talking about, but it would require a lot more thought.
Okay. All right. All right, thanks for that. I filed that one away too for me. Okay, I'll come back to that. Ward and then Rachel, please.
Yeah, thanks. I know we have people joining at 5 o'clock, but Skippy, I just wanted to comment on this. I don't want to over-engineer the process. I don't want to wind up with another 7-month process like the old powerhouse that just led to a lot of disappointment. Co-working space was promised in 517 Hopkins. Who knows where that building sits now? But that was a justification for moving workforce housing off of that site. So if co-work space was promised for 517, I want co-work space there. But I think we're all in agreement. I'll speak for myself, but I think we all want mostly community use and to stick to the aggressive timeline. But I just don't want to really go down the rabbit hole of another 7-month process to decide who gets what at what rate and for how long.
Yeah, and just to be
Thanks.
clear, that's not what I'm suggesting.
Rachel.
Yeah, thank you. Just a couple other thoughts. Ward and I were thinking exactly alike. I really would like a update on the co-working spaces that were approved in the past in place of worker housing. Are they occupied? How have they been marketed? And what are those co-workers being charged? Because that was one of my first thoughts of, wait a second, I thought there was already some significant space in town dedicated towards that purpose. I think two more small things for you, Jen, and I realize there's a lot going on. You guys are probably working on a lot of this already, but to pursue whatever historic preservation grants we can from the state of Colorado, from the gambling money in the state. And, you know, sometimes that just gives you a little extra boom to our budget of what we can get. This is an incredibly important building, and I really, just as the county is doing the courthouse renovations, I'd like to see us really do what we can here in the historic context. And in that line and in that vein, it really brought to me, are there bricked off windows in the old building that we're going to be opening up, or more visibility? You know, because when you start thinking about space and what the public can see from the outside of the building, you know, in a few of the areas, it seems like we've, you know, in the past, not we, but built windows were closed off and things like that. And I think a really important consideration, which I'm assuming will continue to go forward, is the use of the side yard and the restrooms for the Saturday markets. And how, you know, I think this is going to be a building that's going to require a number of different lock-off opportunities. You know, even just the other day, I was in Locals Corner, and I mentioned that, you know, or one of the two buildings there, the sign on your door tells people to go use the restroom in City Hall, and City Hall is locked up anymore, and it doesn't work. But that is one of the few public locations for restrooms in the downtown core, other than over at Wagner Park. So, you know, I would imagine public restrooms have got to be a part of this as well. But so those are the things. And then just kind of on to Skippy, the concept you're bringing up, I have challenges with it as well. I think that occupants and potential occupants should make a pitch to the council, and that should be a public pitch, and we can take feedback from people who've made their pitch. I'm not worried about people pre-doing it with money, but I am getting a little more concerned about who and how we define the community decides. I mean, we've been getting an awful lot of comments about mask policies from everyone from Garfield County up. We're getting an awful lot of comments about housing policies and the lumberyard from people who do not live in the community, but think of the community as their own. And so unless you're going to do your pitch day and then send out a ballot to all 6,000 registered Aspen voters, I don't know how we say who is the community anymore, or whose voice is the most important in the community anymore. And you know, I don't think you can say, oh, we had 30 citizens show up, they listened to all the pitches, they're going to make the choice. That's very opposite. I'd like to involve the community. I'd like to have a transparent process, but we were all elected to represent the community. We were represented to do that work. And I don't mind finding ways to involve people, but it starts to get a little convoluted to me if we say, well, you have to live in city limits to be on this judging panel, or you have to, you know, I don't find it to be a really necessarily open as much as one would think. And then I think Ward's comments are very, very accurate on that as well. I don't want the disappointment that the community has seen from the power plant in the past. And I think that at some level, we have to define the space and the availability of opportunities so that people could develop their plans. I mean, a lot of us were here when the old brand building was the poppycocks and little interior mall and different startup jewelry shops or fashions or things like this. And that sort of opportunity is gone now. But if it's left wide open, we might see one person come in with one proposal to make it a fun house, and another person come in and say, I just need 300 square feet and a little bit of window space. And so are we going to, at some level, develop slots that different people think they could fit their type of business in or their type of public offering? And again, are we just leaving it wide open, or are we starting to define there would be 12 400 square foot spaces available for this? I mean, that's where I'm a little lost about even how people would develop a pitch until we tell them what we want in the building. So thank you for listening to that.
Jen Phelan, in the process and the proposed engagement plan and the outreach, I mean, we've gotten fully baked proposals delivered to us on the Armory building. There will continue to be the opportunity for this broad imagining that Skippy talks to, about people having the opportunity to say, hey, this is how I think it can run, how it could run best. Those opportunities will exist in this process or not?
Yeah, I think the focus at the beginning is to really get ideas on what should be in the building. And then we need to start talking about footprint, because that affects budget, et cetera, timeline. But it's a little after 5. I know you have some other things on the agenda. Can I just kind of repeat what I think I heard and see
Not
if
yet.
I get...
No, not quite yet, Jen. If you just give me 1 more minute, we'll wrap this up in just a minute. Yeah, Skippy, go ahead.
I didn't know if John had anything to say. I'd love to hear from him first if he does. If not, I can jump in.
He did. Go ahead, Skippy.
Yeah. No, I think, you guys all raise reasonable concerns. I mean, Rachel, when you say, what is the box and how can we fit? And I'm having trouble figuring that out. Well, yeah, me too. We haven't figured out any of that. It's exactly how you should think about it. I think maybe we got a little hung up on pitch day. That stood out and everyone kind of grasped onto that. And that's an idea, but that is, I just brought that up as a suggestion, as a manifestation of the deeper point that I was trying to make, which I think got lost. So just to bring that back, which is, I think our community is yearning to be involved in something, to have ownership of something, to work together, like physically on something. And so, whether it's a pitch day or exactly the process Jen is talking about, really handing over ownership. And so, Ward, you're saying it's like 7 months of work. Like, actually, it does the opposite, right? It takes work that would normally be in city staff hands and hands it back to the community in some measure, to give them a sense of, give us a sense of ownership. I just think we really need a project to come together on right now. And so that's kind of the deeper point that I'm trying to make.
Thanks, Skippy. And I think that this process and this, as I said, it's already been wide open. We've already gotten fully, baked packets on the Armory building. I think that will continue. So I totally agree. And I think we all agree that that's the open ear that we've all been listening to this conversation, which is several years old. We've all been listening to it with exactly that, so that it's community-based and community effort. So I won't get hung up on just pitch idea and stuff like that. I think that the opportunity does exist for what you're talking about in some form. As you just said, don't get hung up on an idea of pitch day or something like that, but in some form, I do agree with what you're saying. And I do think that that's kind of what we're trying to embark on. We've all been supportive of this moving towards community space. And you're right, we don't want to be prescribing that. We want to listen to the community. And the first step in this is that outreach about hearing, either what we're missing or what needs to be there, exactly that. So I think these do morph together, and I appreciate you putting in your input for strongly supporting that avenue. So I think I understand you a little bit better now. All right, Jen, I want to bring this around to some kind of closure for next steps. So for me, I just had a couple of questions. Again, to answer the questions that you've put in front of me, I still cannot affirm completely. For example, the OPH and housing city departments, I understand that that's a need of ours now, but I wonder about utilizing some of that space for community service in the same vein of Rachel's questions about how's the lawn going to be utilized and you know, what if it's totally office space, you know, how does that feel for the public or the historic nature of that property as well? I think it's, you know, as I've long supported, I've really supported the powerhouse as being that community space because of its adjacency to the river and its outdoor space. And, you know, the concept there of that didn't make it past the neighborhood or past the previous council or whatever it was, but of activating that space for the community was really enticing to me. I've had to move from that position because of where we are in a process. I didn't originally support moving City Hall down here to Rio Grande, but that's the situation we're in. So I'm being flexible with what I'm saying here. The Armory, again, the questions about ACRA and its space needs are something that I think does add to the discussion about how the Armory should move forward. There's a big difference between ACRA coming in at 2,500 square feet or 5,000 square feet. Those are different numbers, and they lend to different uses for the building. I still wonder about what are we talking about when we talk about floors? When we look to renovate and remodel the Armory, are we talking about maintaining 4 floors, basement, first, second, and third? Are we talking about removing a floor? And that would then also kind of add to the discussion of should the additional space, what is the additional space that's going to be available there? So those are questions that I do think run together. Overall, the general direction you're pursuing, yes, I think you've heard that from this council. We support the Armory accommodating ACRA with community space. We're not sure what that looks like or feels like at this time for questions on both the ACRA side as well as the community space sides. But yes, overall, that is the direction that we are moving. When it talks about the OPH housing city departments, again, I heard support from that, but also a little bit of regret that that's all that it may house. So you know, again, I wonder about that full square footage. What are our needs? What are our needs going forward? Is this a temporary solution as kind of everything seems to be? But anyway, so there's more questions, but in answer to A, yes, you have general direction that agrees with what you've put before us, but there are still outstanding questions. For B, the agreement on an outreach timeline. I think everybody here is supportive of a efficient and effective public outreach program. Skippy brings to the table maybe the sentiment of a more robust program than is often seen. But your timeline, yes, nobody here is saying that it should be minimized or lengthened, that you are looking at an efficient and effective timeline. So that is something that we agree on. On your number 3, the guiding principles, there's as many questions in this as there are statements. So again, you've heard overall general agreement with the guiding principles with questions. And number 4, initial thoughts on Armory operation. This kind of goes to what Skippy was talking about, what Ward was talking about. There's a lot of questions around this. Yes, I think we are talking about it being community-based and community serving. Obviously, if ACRA is taking some of that space, it is also that external to our visitors as well. But we don't know, you know, city facility or master lease. I think you've heard most support here for city facilities so that we retain control there. But there's also been the idea of a master lease if that's something that serves the community better. I mean, that's what I've heard. If there's clarifications there, please, council jump in, and then we've got some input or questions from Sarah.
Yeah.
Skippy.
Yeah, I just to jump in. Yeah, I don't prefer the city to run it. This is what I'm saying. I think as much as it can be community run and operated, the better. That may be a minority opinion, and if so, that's fine. And that may look like a master lease, but it also may look like fractional leases, like Rachel was talking about, where there's multiple spaces that go in there, and maybe we run that, or maybe there's an independent board that oversees that. But community ownership, as much as possible, is what I'm looking for. I forgot to mention it earlier, but just Jackie Long, I got to throw her into the conversation. We desperately need this drop-in center for our youth. And so I just want to make sure she's considered and engaged throughout this process. And then the last thing is just, I have no idea what co-working space you guys are talking about, but I would love to get caught up on that. Not here, obviously, but if someone could fill me in at some point, that'd be great.
Skippy, I can fill you in after the meeting.
And then over to you, Ward.
Yeah, I want to retain control of the building, but I don't want to over control it. I don't want city council being involved in all of these decisions about subleasing. So I really want to explore the idea of a master lease, what that would look like if we can have some nonprofit board or some board make decisions about the subleases, perhaps subject to council approval. But I just don't want to get into deciding what the price of the hamburger is going to be there, or how long the street dancer can have a lease for a little spare. I don't want to get into the minutia of it. So
right, right, understood. Rachel.
I'd like to get a little perspective more from Sarah and Pete and others about the pros and cons of the different approaches on this. The red brick was all going to be kind of citizen managed and run by the Arts Council and the arts groups until there was embezzlement. And, so there's times, and I also don't want to have a situation where we end up with tenants coming to council to help them with problems they're having with their landlord, even though we own the building, because people always come back to whoever owns the property as the final authority, or want to find you to find a way to intervene or change things. So I don't want it to be totally city out. I'm probably closer to where Ward is, but to me, those are really some fine details, and I want to learn from history where we've had good experience, where we haven't, where it hasn't worked in terms of management formats and whatever is suggested for this building, to ask ourselves, well, why aren't we doing that with other public buildings or facilities? So I can't comment as to which approach is best, but I don't want to be in a situation where people turn to us and say something's going wrong with how this is managed, and we say, oops, sorry, somebody else has a 5-year lease, go talk to them. Thank you.
Thanks, Rachel. Sarah.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of council. My request to you this evening is let staff have a little bit of time and then come back to you. I think there's a lot of good comments here this evening. They need to be digested. I actually think maybe we'll even bring back a resolution to try to put some of this in writing to make sure we've captured things appropriately. Then right now what I'm hearing is a lot of divergent opinions on certain positions and a few that you've coalesced around. So I just think that might be a better process to give you an update and make sure in writing we've got what you're looking for. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Jen, with Sarah having said that, I was trying to answer the 4 points that you were asking in the memo, but was there anything else that you needed clarified for you? I still have a couple more questions, but.
I think
have audio from Jen.
Jen, the
Anyone
issue
hear
is
me?
on Tori's.
I
Jen,
hear
the
her.
issue is on Tori's end, not on yours.
Yeah, I have no, yeah, I can't tell, but I couldn't hear anything you just said, Jen, after I asked you a question.
Can we text Tori so he knows?
No, I've got you now.
Oh, okay. All right, I was saying, I think the first three bullets that I had asked for direction is what we need. I want to say I heard that with the Armory, ACRA going in there and public use and maximizing public use. So really understanding the needs of ACRA, eventually the needs of the community, what should go in there, how they work together. That's going to be really important. And sizing needs. With the powerhouse, okay for city offices at the time, but we don't want to forget any of the history of the building or uses outside the building and how those will be managed and what the expectations are for actually both the buildings so that we don't forget about the great spaces around them. I've heard go with the outreach timeline. I think what we'll do is we'll develop that. We'll keep you informed of what's that looking at like. And if we need to expand that timeline, we'll come back to you with that request. And then the guiding principles, okay start, still some questions, but I think we just need an initial start on how do we create a framework for developing community outreach and being able to get answers from people rather than saying anything can happen. Let's try and be a little more targeted, I guess, is what I'd say. And then I did hear a lot, and I think this is down the road, so about the pluses and minuses of it being a city-run facility versus totally run by someone else. And we'll probably need to give you more information on that so you can eventually make a decision on what that looks like.
Great, thank you. And then my last piece here was something that Skippy was just talking about peripherally, I suppose. We are seeing a contract, I believe, this month for the Pickens County agreement for use of the building in the near term. And just recently, there was another question from the school district for availability of any square footage. They are in the need or looking, or anyway, they just are now in contact with Sarah. So, you know, I want to hear about that as well. I guess what I'm saying is I want to know the entirety of what's involved with Pickens County. Other user groups have come to us with some space needs and desires. And I want to know what our opportunities are around that. I'm happy that it's working out with the county for the work that's going to happen on the county courthouse and such. I think that's great. But I just want to know a little bit more about space allocation. What are the square footages that we are retaining for the city? What's available? How can these other user groups, if it's not through us, can they talk to the county? What's the deal here? How do we get the best near-term usage out of this building as well? As Skippy brought up, Jackie Long's program has come to us and just saying that there's still needed a space for, you know, whether it's teens and kids to meet, a place that they're safe, whatever it is. I would love more information about that as we start to look for approval of a contract with Pickens County.
Thank you.
I guess that's it. If there's other council comments, questions, clarifications. Otherwise, they've gonna go back, do a little bit of summary and refinement. Sarah's suggestion to come to us with a resolution that really clarifies what we're looking for. So, all right. Thank you, Jen.
All right, thank you.
Thanks for sticking with us through our technicals too.
Thanks, Jen.
All
Nice
right.
to see you.
Bye.
Guys, we have another item before we can get to our board interviews, and we're running about 25 minutes late. So let's just do this real quickly. I think Angie Sprang might be joining us.
Yep, I'm here.
Okay, so everybody knows that about a week ago, guys, it's a little over a week ago, actually, a suggestion was brought to the table about some community support from Aspen to Boulder, Louisville, and Superior that had some issues with the wildfire. So Angie has done some investigation into some of the effective ways that people are participating in relief funding there. You have those in your packet as well. And I'll just introduce Angie and see if she's got any other items she wants to say or clarifications that she needs.
Hey, thanks for having me this evening. At the request of council, I spoke with the Boulder County Office of Emergency Management, and Boulder County has partnered with the Community Foundation, Boulder County, or the CFBC. In the packet there, you'll see a QR code. For those who are interested in donating to the relief funds for victims of the Marshall fires, you can go right to their site through this QR code. This will go out also through the chamber to local business owners if they'd like to post it around. They're more than welcome to do that. And there's a few other opportunities that someone in town may be interested in organizing a goods and services donations effort. They are not taking individual donations from people, but if there's a community effort where, you know, a large truck were to bring new items that are on the list to their site, their drop-off site, there is a phone number and a link to that information in the packet for someone that might be interested in doing that. All I have. Thanks for the opportunity to work on this project.
Thanks, Angie. Okay, so council, the suggestion was about participating. Angie's research found that probably the best way and the most reliable way to get those monies distributed equitably is through the COM fund. And let's see, as a matter of fact, that address may be incorrect in our packet. It says COM found here. I'm not sure if that's correct or not. Let's see.
Yes,
that is COM found. Yes. So so with the O, comfound.org is the most effective way. But also along the other lines of some hard goods and other relief measures, I do know that Babs at the Big Rap was talking about lending her efforts for a coordination point for that. So for members of the public, we're asking that if you want to join in supporting the community foundation, that you do so. It's very easy for that to happen. The city itself would not be collecting funds and then distributing them ourselves. But instead, council has talked about doing a donation from our own funds. So I'll go to Rachel.
No, I'm in the keep it simple, stupid category on most things, and this is one of them. I think that the people who are directing the community foundation in Boulder are kind of triaging this out as needs occur, as they receive funds, and as they know what's needed. So I think that would be the most direct route, and I would support the $5,000 number that council has been batting around since the last time we spoke.
Okay. Other support, Ward, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll support this. I wanted something more permanent than just putting money into a fund, but if that's what they feel is best, I support that. And I would support having a resolution come to us ASAP to authorize that.
Thank you. Skippy or John?
fully supportive, and I appreciate Rachel for bringing it up.
Thank you. And John?
I agree with what Skippy said. Fully support it. Thanks, Rachel, for bringing it up.
All right. That makes 5. Thank you, Angie, for looking into that information. Again, in our packet, there are other opportunities. I did say that Babs at the Big Rap, for any members of the community that are listening, she is interested in doing even more. So if people want to connect with her, that'd be great. But otherwise, we encourage our community members to take part and look up the Community Foundation and donate as well. Help our neighbors in the Front Range as they often help us. Thanks, guys, so much. Angie, once again, thanks a lot. Let's get to our board interviews this evening, our third item on our agenda tonight. And so we have quite a few applicants that are joining us this evening. I want to go ahead and give you guys a heads up about what order we're going to take these in, the order that are in our packet. We're going to start with the Board of Adjustments, then CCLC, then HPC, Kids First Advisory Board, Next Gen, P&Z, and then the Wheeler. We have quite a few, so we'll try to get through these as expeditiously as we can. And so why don't we start off, like, as I said, with Board of Adjustment. Board of Adjustment has 1 regular member opening and 1 alternate member opening. And we have an applicant this evening. Rick Head is joining us. Good evening, Rick.
Hi, everybody.
What's up, Rick? Good to see you.
Rick, as I always do, I want to thank you for applying again to one of our volunteer boards or commissions. You have a lot of years of service, and we thank you as always for that. My first question to you is, you are aware of the Board of Adjustment powers and duties, as well as meeting schedules, and those are things that you can agree to?
I can and I will. I believe we meet on Thursdays during the month. I think it's once a month. And I was the chairman of this board for 10 years, back in the day when Remo Lavagnino and Francis Whitaker were on the boards. I served for 13 years up until 2000, yes.
Thanks, Rick. Thank you for, again, applying. Open it up to council members with questions tonight. Start with Ward.
Yeah, thank you, Rick, for your continuing and long support of our community. And I don't think the Board of Adjustment meets all that often, but thank you for applying and donating the most precious thing you can, your time.
Now, don't make me cry, Ward.
Any others questions this evening? Not many for you. I guess, Rick, you filled out a complete application for us. Many of us have known you for a long time. Several of us have worked with you for a lot of time. So I don't think there's many questions. If that's all, council, then we'll say thank you to Rick.
I was gonna say, Rick, how come it was such a short retirement after APSHA?
I got bored.
Well, thank you for your service and willingness to volunteer again.
Thank you, Rachel.
Agreed.
All right, Rick, thank you.
Thanks, Rick.
Thank you, everyone. Good luck on your interviews.
Thank you. We're going to move to CCLC. The CCLC, Commercial Core and Lodging Commission, has openings for 3 regular members. We have got 3 applicants this evening that are interested in returning to this board. That's Bill Dinsmore, Angie Wang, and Amanda Tanaka. So let's go ahead and get them on. If we can get video and audio from them, that'd be awesome. I want to welcome all of you. Angie, I see your name up. Amanda, hi. And I'm looking for Bill. Bill may be calling in.
Bill called me this afternoon. His computer died, so he might be calling in, or he may not be around.
Did he call you to fix his computer?
He did.
Okay, so we may not have Bill with us. We've got Amanda and Angie here. Obviously, the answer to my first question is, are you aware of the CCLC, when it meets and what it does? The answer for both of you is an obvious yes. So I just want to say thank you again for your interest in being a volunteer on one of our boards. And I have a couple of items that I may come back to you with, but I'm going to open it up to council members first. So I'm just going to go around who I can. Ward is up. Go right ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I've served on audited or been on this board for a number of years. I appreciate your contribution of times and support you, and thank you for re-upping.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ward. Scathing interview process. Skippy, can I go to you?
Yeah, I guess there's just been, ongoing discussion in terms of restrictions or expansion related to COVID, or just more activity in the summers around the farmers market, the possible activations of the alleyways, and just opportunities to use public space for more affordable communal commercial activity. And I just kind of would love your guys' perspective on that and CCLC's part in it, if any.
And we'll start with Amanda. Go right ahead.
Sorry. Yeah, COVID has given us quite a run for our money, and especially, I am a small business owner and operator. I'm right below or right above Cash in the Mill Street Plaza, and you know what? I think that the leeway that the city has given us as business owners and as a CCLC has really been beneficial to local business owners and the vitality of our city. I think it's really important that we have the CCLC that can work with council and also with the local businesses, as a liaison with council and the local businesses to kind of keep the vitality, but also keep it under control. And so I've really enjoyed working on that, and I really appreciate council helping out local businesses and giving us those options.
Angie?
I think CCLC would love to have a little bit more involvement with some of the activations and possible activation in the alley, and geared more towards helping other local businesses be able to survive here by activating other spaces, lower level spaces, alleyways, second floor spaces. But we do not have that leeway. Right now, CCLC is only doing Saturday market. Back in the day, we were also in charge of the outdoor dining, and I think we're trying to bring that back now. You have to realize that CCLC is also operating with zero budget, so we have no money to work with to help activations at all. I think we're working better now with ACRA too, which is nice, because there was a little disconnect there for a while. I think the group that we have right now is good. We all represent some part of the community and some business in the community.
Thanks, Ange. Skippy, other questions from you?
No, that's great. And then just for us, I guess, Angie, thank you for that. And it's been a number of years hearing board members say things like that, and I would just love to start to give them the tools and agency to work on that stuff as we move out of pandemic life into endemic life.
Thanks, Skippy. Rachel?
Yeah, a couple of things. I found that most recent comment by Angie very interesting, and I don't think I've met either you, Angie, or Amanda personally, so hello, and thank you for your service. I greatly appreciate that. you know, it strikes me that, you know, if there were specific type of things or activations in mind that came up in the course of a year that you would like to have some financial assistance with, you know, maybe there really should be a request to council, and it can be something we start to take a look at or consider, should there be a line item going into the 2023 budget or something. But I'm really not sure the magnitude you're talking about. I'm sure it's relatively simple. But I think that, you know, you always can talk to council during the year or make a request of us, and we'll see, you know, how far it goes. So, but I would like to create more empowerment, as it were, for the board. I think that there starts to be issues where people are like, well, why are they getting this treatment here? Or why can't we have a water fountain on our corner? You know, so we have to keep it equitable, but that's that. You know, I actually have a kind of a different question and comment for you guys. I do think Commercial Core and Lodging Commission has done great work over the years, and appreciate the different people I've known who've served on it. But we're kind of looking towards more pedestrian orientation in the core, and particularly along Galena Street. It used to be angle on one side and parallel parking on the other, and then to increase parking, we created angle on both sides. But I'll tell you, when there's two large trucks or vans opposite each other, it really doesn't have much charm or character left to that street anymore. And so we've been looking at pedestrian orientation plans, and, you know, even the possibility of creating more or more year-round, possibly outdoor dining space and spaces for people to enjoy. So I'm kind of wondering if CCLC has been in the loop with those things, and if you're commenting with our staff as they're bringing ideas to us, and is that general feedback that you're getting from your contacts within the community, that, you know, yeah, people do like more pedestrian orientation, and, you know, the changes we saw from COVID for outdoor dining are something a lot of people like to find ways to keep going on. So just kind of your general thoughts on that emphasis towards more pedestrian orientation and less car-dominated landscapes.
At the moment, we are kind of knee-deep in our farmers market applications, but we have been speaking about this. We've kind of gotten to small groups and talked a little bit about it too. My personal opinion may not be as popular because I have a young child, so safety for me is number one. And this summer, I was so, you know, she's 7 years old, but I was so scared to just have her on the streets. I have her like right next to me. So safety, I love the changes that have been made, you know, just even coming around towards Mill Street, where the fountain is, the one way has really changed and made it a lot safer and more walkable. And so we all have our different thoughts. I think a lot of, you know, businesses are concerned about parking, and I think it's important to, you know, reach out to everybody and make something that, you know, everyone can live with. But I think for me, safety is the most important.
Thank you. Angie, you have any thoughts on that?
The response that I've gotten back from local businesses is that they do not want parking taken away in the core. So to lose 44 parking spaces, they do not feel will be much safer, because it'll create more driving round and round looking for parking, because we're going to stop the amount of cars that are coming in unless we can have another option for them to park elsewhere. So I think building a deck somewhere in the core to replace the parking would be helpful. But I'm all for pedestrian walking town for sure. I think that would be amazing, but we can't ignore the fact that there's always going to be cars driving in to be here. We are in a resort town, so we have to have a place for them to park.
Okay, thank you. And then if there's time, just the other question I really want to ask is, we're all reading about it in the papers, and we all live in town. I've been here 40 years. And there seems to be quite the employee shortage this year. We're seeing changes in the Mid-Valley in terms of availability of anything to rent. But are you hearing a lot about affordable housing needs and how can I stay in business having hard time getting people at a reasonable rate given the rents they have to pay. Is that bubbling up to you as people you're hearing through CCLC or just your business contacts?
Yes. For sure. I run my business and I have a couple of high school girls that kind of help me out on the weekends and after school. So it doesn't affect me as much, but my husband is the executive chef at Matsuhisa and he is having quite the time. You know, it's really difficult. Also too, when people who live down in Silt or Rifle and in Basalt, or they're paying, you know, just as much, they would rather go there, you know, than come all the way up Valley and deal with it. And, you know, just for families too, it's been really difficult to find housing and keep housing.
Yeah, and I only really raise that because we're working very diligently on housing, as you might know, and we're already starting to get a number of letters to the editor, people of, oh no, the lumberyard will be too big and we don't need this much, or we don't need any at all from some people's perspective, apparently. But I was just kind of wondering if your board might eventually want to or need to take a take on that, and if that was something that more people might be bringing up to you than other issues.
This is brought up to me every week. I get phone calls from businesses or tenants that I've put in the commercial core that have retail stores or restaurants here that cannot find help because they don't have housing to offer people. So they can bring in new employees, but they don't have anywhere to live. Or they've lost employees that have moved down Valley and are working down Valley now because it's too hard to drive into town because there's no parking. So it's a lot of, we have several issues that we have to tackle. And I don't envy you guys for having to tackle those issues, but we are in deep need of employee housing for sure to be able to keep this town going.
Yeah, I think there'll be a market adjustment, frankly, myself, because it's not going to come on fast enough or to replace the free market that's really disappearing throughout the Mid-Valley and Lower Valley and the competition with good paying, interesting jobs throughout the Valley now. Thank you for your time. I really appreciate that, both your service.
Thanks, Rachel. John?
Yeah, I just wanted to thank you both for your service up to this point, and I'm just glad that we have a local business owner and a local real estate expert on our community, commercial core and lodging committee. It makes perfect sense. Thanks.
Thanks, John. Yeah, my comments for you guys, I think we're echoed in all of these conversations. I would like to see CCLC giving more input on both the outdoor dining as well as the plans for downtown pedestrian improvements and overall direction of the core, as well as the parking issue that we were just talking about. I can only say thank you to the two of you. You've done a great job on CCLC. I know that you work probably harder than you thought you would on this board. And so I really appreciate the fact that you've given so much time and energy and effort into it. I don't have any really questions to clarify anything. I kind of see enough of the notes and know enough of both of you about your representation. So from me, it's just a thank you.
Thank you.
Have a great evening, you two. We'll catch up with Bill some other time. We're going to keep moving, guys. Next board that we're going to be talking with is the Historic Preservation Commission. That's the HPC. We have two applicants, and we have openings right now for two regular members as well as two alternates. We have Sherry Sanzone with us and Barb Pitchford. Sherry is a current alternate. And Barb is not seated on the board at this time. Anyway, so with that, let's see if we can get them on. Sherry and Barb, if you're with us.
I'm here. Good evening. This is Barb.
Hi, Barb. And 1 second, let me just check on my list here. All right, we have Barb with us. I don't see Sherry right now. So she could possibly still be at her desk working. Barb, thanks for joining us tonight.
My pleasure.
Barb, I noticed that you are applied for 2 positions, HPC and Kids First. Is one more preferable, or are you open to service?
Yes and yes. I think my passion has always been education, early childhood education specifically. So that's my heart and that's my passion. There's a big part of me, though, that's really interested in doing what I can to support preserving kind of the heart and soul of Aspen. And I've heard it all through this meeting. Like, how do we provide for the roots of our community? How do we provide for our workers? How do we keep, our town accessible? And I think having had a historic property in Aspen, I no longer own it, but I learned the process and I learned the complexity of it. I also have recently reread the Aspen Community Plan, which is really quite an extraordinary document. And it's very aspirational. And I think that a lot of us old timers, and there's a couple of you on the board that we've all been around a very long time, miss, the small town culture we used to have, which had a strong middle class working community. We understand why it's been diminishing, but I also want to not necessarily complain about it, but understand what's going on in the community and do what I can to help preserve whatever's been, our very special, unique community. And I think HPC is a visual of, can help support the visual part of it. When you were talking about City Hall earlier, and I go back, 4th grade, you teach, Colorado history, Aspen history, and then 5th grade's Colorado. But anyway, learning about the Armory and the history there and doing what we can. It's right in the center of the town. What can we do to not ignore development, but add, continue to support the culture and the vibrancy. And I'm very fascinated in that. And I know it's very complicated, and I applaud you all for your hard work on trying to, keep the health of our community intact.
Thanks, Barb. Barb, you are aware of the HPC as a board and what it does. Are you also aware of its meeting schedule, and do you have any conflicts with that?
Yes, I'm aware, and no, I do not.
Thank you very much.
Same for Kids First.
Thank you. Council members, this is Barb, and we're talking right now about the HPC. Council members, questions or comments? I'll go Rachel and then Ward.
Yeah, Barb, can you maybe give an example of a building or a project in town that you think was particularly successful, or maybe just any general feelings about the program of how you'd like to see it improve, or is it are the add-ons getting too big, or what are kind of just general thoughts about it?
Well, each of those, and you know what, I would have to tell you that even though I've read the community plan and try to stay up with it a little bit and have attended a couple meetings, I really feel like I have so much to learn about it. It's easy to be quickly critical of something like where Poppy's restaurant used to be, and they put in play housing, which I love, and they put it for the school district, which I love even more. Provided 7 units there. Could it have been a little bit set back a little bit farther? And you can get kind of nitpicky, but I like the fact that they took the Poppy's building, which sat there forever, and then converted it to a pretty decent visual with the Victorian look. So to me, that was a positive. I'm not going to go through some of the negatives, but I think, Rachel, the last thing you said was the largeness of it. Sometimes when you look at these historic buildings and you see the square footage, they're huge. They expand to the edge of the lot. That bothers me, but I don't understand, and I need to understand why the buildings have to be so enormous, because it doesn't seem to be, it doesn't seem to represent the original property or the original look of the building. So, but I have to tell you, it's easy to be critical when you don't really that's superficial. Maybe I just don't understand the project. So I think I have a lot to learn if I were to participate in this commission.
You know, and that was a very thoughtful and reasonable answer. So thank you very much.
Welcome.
Thanks, Rachel. Ward?
Thank you, Barb, for applying for two, I think, really important boards. As you can see, that there's more of a need in HPC than there is in Kids First. And I would just say that I think oftentimes what happens is people get lost in a story, and I've seen it in HPC a number of times where people get lost in the story and get sold by a story instead of the details so much of the property. HPC I value as a community asset, and we've preserved a lot of our buildings. But if you are appointed to HPC, I would really like you to not get lost in the story. And thank you for applying.
Ward, can I just ask a really quick question? When you say not get lost in the story, you mean the history of the property or the details of the development of it? I'm a little confused.
The details of the development, when people come and they're going to add this unit and they're going to do this because they're going to spend more time in the community. Their brother and he or their relatives are going to live in one of the buildings and they're going to live in the other, and they get the approvals.
I gotcha. Yeah.
The next thing that happens is it goes on the market. So not to get lost in the story that somebody's given you.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Thank you, Barb.
Support. John or Skippy, additional questions, comments? All right.
Oh, yeah, I'll jump in. I think John's trying to say something now.
Go ahead, Skippy.
Sorry. I was, maybe this has been asked already, but so it's Barb Pitchford's intent to serve on both boards?
No.
No. Okay. Question answered.
Got it. Question. Barb, have you seen many or some of the project HPC approvals for single family residential in the last, I don't know, year?
Have I seen them?
Yeah.
Are you asking me have I seen the actual building, or have I seen the finished building, or have I seen the project in process?
I don't need you to stand in the front yard. I just want to know if you're aware of sort of what's coming out. And if you are, I have a question about how it relates to your statements. But if you haven't seen them, then I don't want to ask you a question you can't answer.
What can you give me an example? Because I'm not sure to what you're referring, but if you gave me an example of where, I could probably tell you.
I couldn't give you a list of addresses off the top of my head, unfortunately.
I'm sorry, I can't answer your question because I'm not quite sure. In the last year,
Okay.
In the last couple of years, I've seen some, but I'm not sure.
Okay. All right. Then I don't have any further questions. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Barb, I just want to say thank you. Thank you for applying. Thank you for applying to more than one board. I don't have any questions for you either. I liked your answers that you provided, and I appreciate you. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thanks. And I guess you can stay on the line a little bit. We'll have some other questions for you. Council, as I said, I didn't see Sherry. She did not chime in, so I guess she is not here with us either this evening. Our next board that we're going to be speaking with is the Kids First Advisory Board.
Your Honor, if I may, at the beginning of this, I'm going to recuse myself from this discussion. My wife is applying for a position, and I think it's best that I not be involved in this at all.
All right, thank you for that, Ward. Council members, tonight, Kids First Advisory Board, 3 applicants. Let me get to this page. Right now, Kids First Advisory Board is a full board with an opening as an alternate member, is what I have here. Doesn't quite match the dates of expiration of terms that I see in front of me, but one alternate member is the open position here. Let me see what I have. If that's because, so it is a full board. There's an expiration later this year, but this is a second alternate position for the Kids First Advisory Board. Our applicants this evening are Chelsea Dillon. I saw her name there. I believe Chelsea is with us. We've got Barb, who we just spoke with about HPC. And then Mimi Howenstein. Is Mimi with us as well?
I'm here.
Great. Got Chelsea and Mimi. All right. Thank you guys, of course, for applying for this position. My first question to each of you, and Barb has already answered this, but to Mimi and to Chelsea, you are aware of the meeting schedule and the duties and responsibilities for the Kids First Board, and you don't have any conflict therein?
How long are the terms?
Let's see, 3 years. It's a 3-year term.
Okay. I'm aware of them and I don't have any conflicts.
All right, thank you so much for that. With that, then I'll go ahead and open it up to other council members for questions, comments. John, can I start with you? Do you have any questions for Kids First Board applicants?
Yes, I guess I'll ask, I know Mimi and Barb have backgrounds in education, so I guess I'll ask Chelsea what your interest is. I saw your response, but.
Sure. So my interest is just that I have a 1.5-year-old and a 4-year-old. So I am currently very involved in the early education process with them. And I am pretty aware of all the different options. I've researched them a ton, and I have listened to a bunch of the Kids First recent meetings and calls. I'm very aware of the different issues that are going on right now. And I have been on different boards such as the Buddy Program Board and the Mocha Foundation, which supports education in Pakistan. I have a passion for children's education and development, and also a passion for Aspen. I've been here 16 years, and I just think I would be a great addition to the team.
Thanks, Chelsea. John, any others?
You know, both the other packets were fairly complete, and we've heard from Barb. You know, I read about Mimi's experience working with Terry End. So that endears me a little bit to Mimi because Terry End's a dear friend of my mother-in-law's. But we will base this decision on the merits of the applications.
Thanks, John. Skippy, any questions?
Rachel's got her hand up.
Nice pass there, Skippy. I'm just going to ask, it's been in the papers quite a bit. There's controversy about it. You know, the yellow brick is a building the city spent $1.9 million to purchase. Additional funds were expended from other programs to come up to a $3.6 million total before we started renovating and doing a lot of work in the building. But the question has become utilization, and is it okay to have spaces that are only used 4 days out of a 7-day week, or that close for multiple weeks during the summer? And is that fair to basically everyone who's waiting for childcare and looking for new placement? You don't have to have any definitive answers, and maybe just kind of how you look at challenges like that, or how you approach solving challenges like that. But any thoughts that you have would be welcome. It's an open dialogue.
This is Barb. I would love the opportunity to speak to that, and I'll speak very briefly. I feel very strongly about it. I was the principal of the Yellow Brick Building, and there were a few of us, plus Peters, that worked very, very hard to get it dedicated. We all had small children. We didn't have, there was not really childcare for the working parent. So the original purpose of the Yellow Brick Building was to provide childcare for the full-time workers of the community. So that's not an 8:30 to 3:30 preschool. That's a 7:30 or 7:45 to 5:15 to 5:30. We were actually hoping for a 7-day a week, if you know, alternating between different childcare, so that many of the workers who work evenings and weekends have quality childcare. Well, that was kind of a pipe dream, but the minimum we believed, and we dedicated it. This was long before even Kids First came into being. This was in 91, and we were all there, and we were going, yeah, this is what we have to do. We have to make it affordable rent, so there's affordable childcare. So yes, I feel very strongly that that building should be used for childcare for our community workers, and that means at least 5 days a week, and certainly if a regular work is not ever really 8 to 5, but a day that's healthy, robust, vital childcare that's accessible to the workers of our community.
Thank you, Barb. Chelsea or Mimi?
I'm happy to speak. I agree with those comments. However, I believe at the current time that the issues run extremely deep, and I think there are just so many more issues that we're dealing with right now. And number one being that none of these programs can find and keep educators or daycare workers at all. And I mean, you know, that runs deep with issues that we've been talking about previously this evening, because none of them can find housing, and a lot of them are driving from SIL and things like that. I know that the ELC has lost 15 teachers already this year, which is just crazy. So yes, I agree that the building should be open for working parents. I will admit my child goes to playgroup, and I do not want to see the program shut down, because I am a working parent who has found a way for it to work for me. I understand all of the goals and the issues, but I think that in the short term, we're creating more issues, and there might be a better way. And I'd love to figure out other ways to look at solving this issue, because I think we're trying to take care of the childcare crisis. And in doing that, we're creating a bigger childcare crisis because these programs may shut down. And I have been on waiting lists since before my first child was born. And now I might not have childcare for either of my children because I won't have priority on any of these other wait lists. So I do have a child, two children who are being affected by this. And I would say that I see both sides, and I would love to bring other ideas to the table.
Thank you for that. I appreciate that.
And I think too that, there is conflict going on, but a conflict can also be a way that you change and you make improvements. And so people have to be willing to sit down and to listen and to work towards solutions. And, I like Barb, I'm an educator, and I remember when they opened the Yellow Brick, and I think it should be open for working parents, but I also know what it is to be a caregiver, especially over the past 2 years. It's been really difficult, and I know it's hard to find good teachers of young children and to pay them well. And, this is a huge systemic problem. And it's an opportunity for us to really come up here in Aspen with a really good solution that works for the teachers and the children and the parents. And, I think it's an opportunity. And to come up with a solution means sitting down and listening to each other and respecting each other and not getting overly emotional about it.
Thank you, Mimi.
Thanks, Rachel. Skippy?
Nothing additional. We touched on everything that I was hoping to hear about. I thought we might.
Chelsea, go right ahead.
So I just wanted to add one more additional comment. I know currently on the board, I believe only Michaela has children in the preschool, pre-K programs. So I would be an additional parent who, is deep in that right now. Whereas other people, they all have older children, I believe.
Thanks, Chelsea.
Yeah, and I'd just like to say that sometimes it's good to have someone who has a perspective, who has a long-term understanding of what's gone on in our community too. So that's the other side of it.
Thank you, Mimi. Any further questions or comments for council members?
Yeah, I'll ask one other
Rachel?
question here, because it's something I've been raising recently, and I do appreciate everyone comes to things with their own circumstances. And, Chelsea, I would imagine that should you be appointed, I at least would ask that you might want to recuse yourself from that question of how many days a week, because obviously, and I appreciate you putting out there that you have a personal interest in that one way or the other. That's different from someone who doesn't have kids in a specific program that might affect your vote. That's the thing, and it would go across the board for any board. Once there's any sort of familiar or use involvement, you just have to recuse yourself from those questions, and that just happens. So it's a small town. Everyone has some conflict, so it's not personal. Please know that. But what I was going to ask is that currently it's really only City of Aspen sales taxes supporting the Kids First Board. And yet at some level, folks want Aspen to be able to provide the subsidized childcare and the spaces for kids throughout Picken County beyond Aspen's resident population. And I understand that's appropriate because it's our workforce's population. But there's a point at which you start to say, wow, why aren't any of the businesses at the Airport Business Center contributing sales tax to help support childcare, or the restaurants on the top of the mountains? And I'm just wondering if that is pursuing greater funding resources is something that you guys as board members would be interested in helping pursue, because whether it's constructing new facilities or continuing to subsidize and offer all the other benefits of the Kids First programs for quality education, we're going to run out of resources. And it can't be done all alone on the city's back.
Well, I totally agree. And I remember when it was a big deal where the school district wanted to sell, that's a square block, and they wanted to sell it to the highest bidder and developers, and we fought very hard for it. But we also realized that there was a lot of deferred maintenance on those buildings and radon and all sorts of stuff. So it's great to have the building, but it costs a lot of money to put that building in good shape, to keep it in good shape. And we fought hard for the sales tax to support it. And I could get real excited about that. It's another community effort to say we have this incredible resource in terms of providing for our the heart of our community, and what can we do to expand the support of this?
Yes. Thank you, Barb.
Yeah, I definitely think that we need as much funding as we can get. And I think, federally and by the state, they're realizing how important early childhood education is. And so we can look that way. And I think that, we need to look for more funding.
Thank you. Chelsea?
I would agree with all those points. I definitely think that the top of the mountain and ABC should be contributing.
Great. Thank you very much. I really appreciate you guys' willingness to serve on difficult boards with difficult decisions in front of you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Rachel. Thank you to all three of you. Of course, applying for these volunteer boards and commissions is what makes Aspen such a strong community. So thank you guys for all of that. We will be notifying you about appointments in the next week or two. So thank you guys so much. And Chelsea, I wanted to thank you for some of the emails that you've written and your input over the last month or so. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Have a great night. Thanks, Barb.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye.
Bye, Mimi.
Bye-bye.
Okay, let's get Ward back on if he's got half an ear going here and he can sign back in. Thank you very much. Let's get on to our next board, guys. Our next board is Next Gen. The Next Gen Advisory Board is actually looking for 6 regular members and 1 alternate member. We've had a few people stepping down from the board for various reasons, but we were already at a dearth of participants as it was. So we have quite a few. Now tonight, we have 4 applicants. Well, actually we have 6 applicants, but 2 of them have notified us that they're not going to be able to make it. So we have 4 applicants this evening with 2 that we will be able to interview at a later time if we want to do that. So let's get going with Next Gen. I'm looking for Cody Horn, Lucas Wampler.
Howdy, guys.
Hi there.
There it is.
Got Lucas is on with us. Bodie Stewart. Bodie's on with us. And Ashley McKnight.
Hi there.
Hi, Ashley. And then I'm looking, did I hear a Cody? Was Cody there as well? So Cody might have to join us at another time as well. For now, we have got 3 applicants with us. So hello to Lucas, Ashley, and Bodie. Thanks for joining us, you guys.
Thanks for having us.
Normally I start off this by asking about making meeting dates and understanding the roles and responsibilities, but the meeting dates for Next Gen a little bit different, a little bit more flexibility. So that can be determined by a board that is going to be seated here, and truly a majority and a quorum will be seated. So I'm not going to ask about that, but I'm going to start out. My question then will be to Lucas, then Ashley, and then Bodie. Lucas, do you have any questions for us about Next Gen as a board?
Just generally what it does. I mean, I know right now they're taking a survey to see what the people 18 to 40 are looking for in the future, but just in general, what the purpose of the committee is. I would love to just,
Yep.
If you could elaborate.
So the mission is to the mission is to advance the policy interests of the 18 to 40-year-old demographic who live or work within the Aspen area.
Yeah.
In order to do that, it is the board operates with annual goals, and then the opportunity to give city council members direct input from the board on items that impact the 18 to 40-year-old demographic, or items that are coming up on our schedule of agenda items. So it's an advisory board that gives us input and maybe brings some items to light as well.
Okay, thank you.
You're absolutely welcome. Ashley?
Hey, Tori.
Skippy, go right ahead.
No, just a heads up. Cody is texting me that he's been on for an hour. He's on now, but we can't hear him. So however that works on your end.
Maybe Cody can phone into the meeting instead of connect?
Yeah, it's a 408 number, Tori, that he's been calling in from. I can text it to you, but.
All right, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
I had to press *6. I did not know that was how I unmuted. I apologize. I've been listening for quite some time.
Perfect. Well, Cody, thanks for joining us. My question was, do you have any questions for us about the Next Gen board?
No, I sort of echo all that you guys have been saying in terms of the direction of the board and the committee, I should say, and just enthusiastic about participating in the public process and sort of giving back to a place that I care about.
Thanks, Cody. Ashley, and then Bodie. Ashley, did you have any questions for us about the Next Gen board?
Yeah, this might be one that you guys don't even answer, but I guess, I know what you guys do on paper and what your goals are on paper, but does anyone have any specific goals outside of the purpose of this board that they want to speak to, and just give us a little more insight?
When it relates to expectations of the board?
Yeah.
Yes, Rachel, go right ahead.
Ashley, that's a great question. And I don't know that this is legitimately an expectation of the board, but I will put it out there that I was mayor back in 99, 2001. So I'm an old person now. But when we were annexing the Burlingame property into city limits, I decided to put it to a vote. It didn't have to go to a vote, but I wanted to create a mandate that Burlingame should be housing and let the voters weigh in on it, because the mayor's term is a short 24 months. And it was won by 60-40. And then the new mayor who got in said she was going to build it, but then decided not to. And that's when I ran to get back on city council, strictly as a council person, 1 vote out of 5. And we pushed that, I think with Tori's help, to back forward, that yes, we are going to build Burlingame. And we had to do a second vote, because after we had done the actual land use design and entitlements, it went to a referendum by the citizens. But in both of those votes and on other issues, we had a lot of individual citizens who would come together to support the housing, to say this is what we need, to work on a campaign to help it succeed. And if there's anything that's really changed that I noticed in their current term with council, is how little community people come out for that support. And I think it's because people are working too much, or they don't know that it's needed, or it makes a difference. But if there was any expectation. And, you know, it's kind of like we once formed a blue ribbon capital improvement committee to help us decide where to put our money. But we were expecting them to later be advocates to say yes to the public. I agree, this is where we should put the money, or we should even raise more money to save the ice garden or whatever it was at the time. So that would be my only expectation of anyone on any board, is that they help us rally to the issue when the issue's there. Thank you.
Thanks, Rachel. We can always come back to this, but Bodhi, did you have any questions about the Next Gen board?
Yeah, I did. I think Rachel touched on a lot of that, so thank you. Appreciate that. I'm curious, from where you're sitting, what does success look like in a year? If this board is extremely successful, what does that look like?
Skippy, go right ahead.
Yeah, I think you guys are going to have a really amazing opportunity as sort of a second wave of Next Gen. I think success looks like defining exactly what Next Gen's responsibilities are, what is within your purview, and then from within that scope, hopefully identified in very short order and accepted by this council, picking your priorities for the year, which will be up to you, but seeing significant progress on your advocacy towards those things.
And I'll put an add on that. It's just simply success is working through your frustrations, because there's no board that's not very frustrating, and they take time, and issues take time. You know, so that's one measure of success. But the other would be to have started to understand how small policy changes that the council may be making will impact that future that you guys hope to be inhabiting in this community. And so again, whether it might seem obvious that, oh, it's a entitlement hearing for a housing project at X size. Do I want to go in and tell the council as a group to make it bigger, or to hold the line and keep it the same, or maybe it's okay to make it smaller? You know, I don't know. But sometimes having some advocates for where things are going, or you know, we're all under a moratorium right now because we're looking at how to make the mitigation for new home construction in our community actually balance out to help create the affordable housing to service that same home. I would love to have people who can say, this will affect the type of community I live in the future, and this is why it's good, or this is why it's bad. So I think success is starting to realize what even what seem like somewhat more arcane policies will mean to you if you try to project them out 10 years. Another example might be the entrance to Aspen. And the other thing that really strikes me, let's see if I can pull this back together here, of what success looks like. You know, I agree with Skippy on his points of defining it for himself, but I think to be able to say, oh, we, the council, we, Gen X, like the current design for the lumberyard. We want to see it through the entitlement process. But I guess it's really thinking big is, you know, that's housing. We always hear from Next Gen on housing. And the thing I noticed that, and I'm newer to this board and Next Gen's work than Skippy is for sure, but it seemed to be a lot about housing at first. And then over a few years, you started hearing Next Gen say, what about childcare? Because we saw our Next Gen people moving into a different role and time in their lives. And so that's the type of anticipation looking forward that I think would define success for Next Gen, and literally for you guys to via reviewing the community plan and seeing where it matches up and what could be improved in that, of saying this is what success for my generation will look like in Aspen. And that will take more than 1 year to get to, but if you had your own vision statement of what will success for Next Gen look like in Aspen, and you had that done within a year, I think that would be pretty successful. Thank you for listening to me go long.
Rachel, Ward?
Yeah, thank you all for applying. I think all of your questions are really ones that you should be answering for yourself, because I think that the board has not been really functioning recently. There hasn't even been enough membership for a quorum. So what does success look like? Bodie, I think you guys should define what success looks like. Ashley says, what are the specific goals? Define your goals. Lucas, what's the purpose of the board? Yeah, what is the purpose of the board, Cody? Thank you. I know you've been around and Lucas have been around your whole lives. But I think that Next Gen should really define itself. You know, I think you should become, the Next Gen board should become a subject area expert on something that is relevant to your demographic, whether it's mental health or affordable health insurance or childcare, workforce housing, a livable wage. I think you should really define something and chew on it and dive into it and really become an expert that you can give City Council some good, solid advice on it. It is an advisory board. And I haven't heard much in the last couple of years from the Next Gen board, and I want it to be a living, purposeful body of brilliant young minds, and that can only be if you guys define it.
Thanks, Ward. For me, success, I'm hopeful that Next Gen can get a process in place that is a good communicative avenue for City Council. I think most importantly is to get your input and your thoughts on stuff and to set up a proper channel for that, which has been some of the work that we've been doing. So we're not far away, but as I said, this is a rebuild of the Next Gen. As Skippy said, a new opportunity, a second birth. So, you know, we've got some work to do, but success for me is really just getting a great open communication line with Next Gen.
Sure that we're looking at not only equity in policies, but health in all policies, and what a supportive community does for not only the people that live there, but the people that serve the community itself or that participate in the community. Because I know we have such housing issues where people aren't necessarily a resident per se, but they're a functioning cog in the system that makes Aspen float. So I think that there's a broader context that needs to be included in not only the Next Gen board, but what we want Aspen to look like in the future, and how the capacity of our development and what building a population looks like in terms of preserving cultural assets, as well as being responsive to the needs of underserved populations as well as underserved markets. So I think we can be creative and have fun with this.
Thanks, Cody. Bodie, Ashley, then Lucas. Same question to you guys. Bodie, Ashley, then Lucas.
I mean, you really can't say it better than that. I feel like you really hit the nail on the head there. I think for me, it's been a struggle to live here and not feel like I can afford to buy a house or a condo. I could spend like $1 million on a 400 square foot apartment. And that seems insane to me. And it's really sad to me because I feel like we live in such an amazing, special place. But people in my generation like aren't going to be able to live here. We're just not going to be able to do that. And unless we are extremely rich. Nothing wrong with that, but it just is not representative of the United States. Something else I'd really like to see is more diversity, more opportunity for other like Latinx people like myself to live and not just work in Aspen, but to really engage and be part of the community. There's a lot of areas, but I think if I had to choose one, that's the one I'm most passionate about.
Thanks, Bodie. Ashley and then Lucas.
Yeah, so like Bodie said, I'm really going to kind of echo their statements as well as add my own flair to the answer. I definitely, in my background, I'm a planner, so I am wired to want to bring everyone to the table and give everyone an opinion. And oftentimes in my work, I've worked, now I work in the private sector, but prior I worked in the public sector. And I would always see commissions and committees asking these questions. And it would be like, people my age know the answers to this. Or like, they would be asking, how do we engage people in their young 20s to mid 20s? And, you know, I think they have such new ideas that really need to be captured and heard. And kind of to echo what I believe Cody said was that we need to understand what it is we want, you know, whether that's to continue the festivals that we're currently having, or to echo what Bodie said, if those are too expensive to us to enjoy those types of amenities or opportunities, then what is it that is available to us? And how do we help engage everyone in the community and help the city grow in turn?
Ashley, Lucas?
So I just want to start off by thanking you for having me. And secondly, as Willard mentioned, I was born here, raised. I've seen this town change a lot in the 25 years I've been here. I recently have acquired my father's business. It's Aspen Velo, the bike shop down on Mill Street. So I have no plans on leaving this town anytime soon. And I really want to make sure it's a place that I still want to live 30, 40 years from now. I think it's amazing you guys even have a committee like this where you can ask a younger group of people. Most politicians generally don't want opinions of those much younger than them, tend to not always get along the most. I don't know. You guys are not the oldest politicians, so you generally have a better sense than, you know, maybe folks in DC or but I just really want to make whatever difference I can. I think what's been echoed the most from the guys I've heard so far is housing for people my age is becoming a pretty big issue. I've had multiple friends get totally priced out of the valley, even out of the state in some cases. But I know if we all work together, we can tackle something. That seems like a good place to start. And I'm just passionate about keeping this place the way I love it.
Thanks, Lucas.
That is all.
Thank you. And then my second question, which is just a quick follow-up, is around time commitment. We're all saying this board is ready for a reboot. That's an exciting opportunity, but it's going to take time, investment of time, and follow through. And so, are you ready for that? Are you excited by that?
Let's go in reverse. Lucas.
I can go. Okay.
Lucas, Ashley, Bodie, then Cody.
All right. I'm sorry. I just blanked. You put me up first.
He was asking about your interest and your passion for the board, and do you have the time and energy it may take?
Absolutely, the time commitment. So I think it's amazing. Like I said, you even have this in the first place. I am excited to be a part of it, depending on what the project even looks like. As I mentioned, I do have a business to run, so that's going to take my time up in the summer, but in the winters, I'm all free. I'm willing to dedicate as much time as I can, but if it's reasonable, afternoon meetings like this, I see no reason why I wouldn't ever be able to attend it.
Thank you. Ashley, Bodie, and then Cody.
Yeah, I definitely with things that I'm dedicated about, whether I have the time or not, I'll make it.
Bodie?
Yeah, I have time.
Okay. Cody?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, as a private sector planner, I think that it's a duty and a moral ethic to do public service to some degree. And I'm used to council and commissioner meetings, so just add it to the list.
Thank you, guys.
Just add it to the list. That's our motto. Thanks, Cody. Let's go over to Ward. Ward?
Yeah, I didn't really have a question for all of you. I think Skippy and others have covered your overall, but Bodie, your resume to me was pretty interesting. You work remotely for RMI, is that correct?
REI.
Yeah.
REI, sorry. What and you said your roots are in the community and that you were with KD&K back in 2016 and 17 as development. I'm curious, what's your anchor in the community now? You mentioned, you know, $1 million for a 400 square foot property is not it's not unusual. It's not desirable, but housing is really not all that affordable. And you said you wanted diversity, engagement, and be part of the community. So I'm just curious, what are your commitments to the community since you don't work in the community or for a business in the community?
Yeah, for sure. Well, my family's here. I grew up here. So that's one anchor that I have in the community. Worked at KD&K. I've worked at SkiCo, you know, just been around the valley my whole life. But honestly, I'm looking to anchor myself more, which is why I want to get involved and join this board. I think it's really important. And I don't know if people talk about this a lot, but I feel like when you move back, there is not a very strong like group of people around in my age group in Aspen. Mostly it's Carbondale, Basalt, Glenwood. And that's something that I struggle with. Like, it's something that I really want to build for myself here and maybe build for others. It's something that I've had a challenging time finding. And I think that it's important to create that for everybody who, myself and others who come after me as well.
Thank you, Bodie.
Thanks, Ward. Council members, any further questions or any inquiries of these four? Like I said, we do have others that couldn't make the meeting this evening. So we'll probably have to schedule them as well. There's a lot of openings for this board. So I want to thank you guys for applying. Thank you so much for your time tonight for the interview. We will be getting back to you in a week or two when we have appointments ready to go. I can say this, all of you are excellent candidates. The energy, the insight, and the ideas that you're sharing with us here are really great to hear. And Next Gen will be better served with any of you on it. So I thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Council, I'm going to move us forward. We've got two more boards to speak with interviewees. We've got P&Z next. We've got open positions on P&Z in our packet reflect 5 regular member openings and 2 alternate members. So there is some need for membership here. And tonight we have 2 applicants. One is a reapplicant, one is a new applicant not serving currently. We've got Bill Guth. I saw his name out there. Bill's still with us, I hope.
I'm here. Sorry, just had to move.
Okay, I see you. I've got you. Okay, no problem. Bill's with us, and then Teresa. Teresa with us?
I'm here.
Okay, great. Thank you guys for joining us. Teresa, obviously serving as the chair, you know the Planning and Zoning Commission extremely well. Bill, you've got some experience working with Planning and Zoning commissions. But Bill, let me just ask you, are you also aware of the meeting schedule? And is that any problem for your schedule?
I am. I'm self-employed. I have multiple businesses. I can make it work in my schedule.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. I'm going to go ahead and open it up to council members for questions of either of these 2 candidates. Any initial questions?
Sure.
Thanks, Rachel. We'll start with you.
Yeah, thank you. I'd just like to know, how do you feel as planning and zoning members or potential members about the lumberyard project that the city has been working on out at the Airport Business Center for approximately 300 little plus units of affordable housing? Is that something that you think the community needs, or is going to be out of context with the community, or the right or the wrong thing for us to be moving forward?
Teresa, let's start with you and then Bill.
From a perspective of a P&Z member, I don't have as much opinion. From a perspective of a citizen who's been in Aspen for about 20 years and can't win an employee housing unit, it's the right move. Are there some aspects that I have concerns about? Absolutely. The traffic is one of them. The parking is one of them. The density is one of them. Living by the airport is something that I personally would struggle with, but I understand that that is a place that we have space and we need more available housing for those of us who, like Bodie, like some of the other candidates for the other boards, want to live here. We need a place to go.
Thank you.
And Bill?
Sure. I think it's a good project. I think it's a project that should have been started multiple years ago. I think it's shameful that it's taking as long as it is. I think it's been almost 5 years since the city purchased the property, and granted, I do a lot of development work myself, but I don't know a single person who would invest with me if I took that long to get a project off the ground. So the community needs it. I think the community needs to acknowledge that it does represent real growth and that it is not a mitigation of growth, but it will bring more full-time employees and residents to the city of Aspen. And that's a real thing that needs to be acknowledged and understood. But I do agree that the community needs it. I think we should be moving much quicker. I think it should be in construction already, if not completed. And I'm fully in support of the concept of it.
Okay, and Bill, just so you're aware, the Burlingame property was purchased in 1996, and we're just getting the 3rd phase of that built now.
Also shameful.
Yeah, well, sometimes it's a matter of the community not wanting so much and didn't really think they had an affordable housing crisis until just the pandemic, frankly, and the resignation. Because I've been on the battle lines of many, a NIMBY, we don't need it, and Burlingame itself had to go to 2 votes. So I wouldn't be surprised if there's not going to be a referendum on the lumberyard before that gets finished. And as you know, the county doesn't contribute any resources towards our money for that, for housing. They mitigate from new growth, but they don't have any resources for shortfall. So thank you guys both for that. And guess the other question I'd like to ask, and Bill, perhaps you more specifically, this is your chance to get things on the table. How would you perceive an appointment to planning and zoning, perhaps affecting or impacting the petition drive, I believe, to overturn the moratorium on short-term rentals and mitigation dollars?
Well, I'm not sure there's a direct connection to my efforts on that I have so many others helping me with, but I think it's all in the name of being involved and having a voice in the community, which many of us in the real estate industry and many other industries do not feel that we have right now. And I think that I and others bring a very experienced voice to the table, particularly in regards to things like land use, that maybe isn't represented as well as my voice might be.
Okay, thank you for that. And do you feel that Aspen is under a great growth pressure, or what's your sense of the community vibe about the growth and the potential of, say, short-term rentals on all of Red Mountain and surrounding the community of Aspen? Is that going to be too much growth or just enough growth?
Is that directed just to me or to both of us? And do you want me to go?
To everyone who's applying for P&Z, I think that'd be helpful. A big part of the question for me is the Aspen Area Community Plan and how we are perceiving that and its total capacity numbers that are projected for the Upper Valley, even during high season.
Yeah, I'm happy to go first, or Teresa can.
Go ahead, Bill, and then Teresa.
Well, I think it's important to understand that short-term rentals have always been a critical part of Aspen's bed base and the surrounding area, including Red Mountain and things that sort of feel like they're part of Aspen but aren't within the city limits. I think that there's a management issue, not as much a use issue. And I think that there are other communities nationally that have handled the management of short-term rentals a lot better than we are. We've moved in the right direction by issuing licenses. I do not think that our regulations and our enforcement of those regulations are sufficient. And I think that a little could go a long way in resolving some of the issues with short-term rentals. As you said yourself, Rachel, the $5 million, $10 million, $25 million house is never going to house locals again. It's never going to ski instructors. It's never going to house those type of people. And that's reality, right? And there's nothing that the municipal government or staff can do about that secular trade wind. But what we can do is make sure that the impacts of short-term rentals on neighbors who do live there full-time are mitigated. And Palm Springs, I think, is a great example. They have a short-term license program. They are very, very strict on their rules. If you violate the rules, the license is revoked for multiple years. There aren't chances. The landlords and the property managers are extraordinarily tough on the tenants because they know what the stakes are. And I think that the community would be very supportive of that. So I really think it's a management issue. I don't think that it's that much of it's something that we can totally effectuate change on. And I don't think that the use of a house being, whether it's being rented or being occupied by someone's guests, are that different.
Thank you very much.
That's specific to short-term rentals. We can talk about the other elements as well.
There's 1,000 pieces of that AACP to talk about. Thank you.
Yeah, regarding the short-term rentals, I think I will echo some of Bill's comments of, I believe it's a management issue more than we permitted it too late. We let it go for too long, and now we're trying to rein in a horse that's running at full speed. And that's tough. That's a really hard position to put our community in, and you guys as council people in, of how do we do this? I do believe management and reducing the number or capping the number of permits is helpful. I don't know, honestly, I have been too busy with other things to really dive into the short-term rental. It does not impact me all that much. I will say that I believe living in a building where I live with 2 short-term rentals directly above me, and people who own them who also come, the impacts are quite different when it is short-term versus when it is the people who own these houses.
Yeah.
They are not
equally frustrating for the person who lives below them, but still very different. So, I think we're moving in the right direction in getting some more stringent regulations, and I would like to see the impacts really figured out. What are those impacts on the community? We're not going to have a $20 million house lived in by a local, but what is that impact? I don't know what they are. Yeah, that's not my purview. But as far as growth, if you look at our census, we didn't grow. I don't believe that census, but when it comes to construction, we're busy. I work in architecture and I'm busy. I have applicants all the time. Is it too much? I don't know. I only do residential, so I don't see the commercial side of it. I don't feel like I have enough information to really truly answer that question. And I will bring it back to, I don't know if politicizing a P&Z member and putting them on that position is the correct thing, because I believe P&Z has a very specific goal, and that is to uphold the intent of the land use code. Understanding that the land use code was based off the AACP, but whether or not I believe short-term rentals should be reined in is a different perspective than if a code section comes in front of me, do I believe it meets the intent of the AACP? I believe that's my purview as a P&Z commissioner. So I'm a little hesitant to put a lot of my personal perspective into this because I don't believe that's my role as planning and zoning. I believe that's your role as council.
Yes, I appreciate that. I think you're very accurate. And the thing is, we tend to look for feedback from people who are on the front lines. But I do respect your opinion there very much so. And both of you, Bill, as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Rachel. Ward?
Great. I don't know how to say this other than to say that we have to have a separation of the politics and the duties of P&Z members as defined in the bylaws, and that land use policy is really not defined by P&Z. That city council really sets those land use policies, and I think the duties of a P&Z member is to, as Teresa just said, to uphold what the land use code is. And so I'm a little concerned with Bill and his ability. A couple of times in your application, you said that you wanted to use land use code or land uses, contribute to responsible land use policy making, and to help to shape our land use policy and exemptions. So that concerns me a little bit, that it's not the duty of P&Z to set these policies. And so
wouldn't it be a good idea, Ward, to utilize the experience of people on P&Z to help inform your land use policy making changes?
Yeah, and that brings to my point of the separation of politics and the duties of P&Z. You mentioned, and I took note of your knowledge of other communities that have put STR regulations into force, and I really invite you to participate in the STR discussion. I know that we've looked at a lot of different communities, but really this I don't think is the forum for discussion on STRs, because I don't think at this point that goes before P&Z.
Right.
So
I bring it up.
I really invite your participation in that formulation of STRs, but I don't think that's at this point germane to membership in P&Z.
Right. Again, I did not bring it up, Ward.
I understand that. I know that, but I made notes that you had ideas from other communities, and I wanted to know what those were. And because I think all of us want to do the best thing we can to control the negative effects of STRs. And So I made notes of that from your comments, and thank you for those. And I do invite further conversation on that matter.
Thanks, Ward. Skippy?
Yeah, a little bit. But on the flip side of that, actually, T, I was on P&Z when there was the commercial core moratorium. You were not on it yet at that point, right? You came on afterwards? Okay.
Correct.
So I don't know if you have any sense of how P&Z was engaged, but we were engaged during that process, and we intend to engage P&Z again during this moratorium process. And I wondered if you could speak to how you think P&Z would be most constructively engaged.
You are correct. I was not on that, and I do not know how P&Z was engaged in the commercial core, but I have been obviously part of this moratorium in that Ben Anderson has come to us with some of the outreach that they're doing. And I believe, although they haven't come to us in a formal way, I believe our input it appears that we are going to be asked to provide advice or advisement on whether or not the proposed changes meet the intent of the overall sections to which they're changing and meet the intent of the AACP. We are not asked to provide language. We are not asked to provide our perspective on whether or not this is a good idea or not. It is, does this meet the intent of the overarching section? Do you as a board support these changes? Do you recommend that council adopt them? Do you recommend minor changes to them because they do or do not meet such and such of regulations? I am speaking completely hypothetically because they have yet to come to us with anything. But that has been our purview in the past when they have done code changes, is like, these are the changes. Do you as a board support them or recommend that council adopt them?
Got it. And knowing that, assuming that is what happens, do you think that that is the best use of P&Z, or do you think that there would be a higher or better way to engage you guys?
I believe that is the proper use of P&Z, given the purview of what P&Z is like the heading and the quasi-judicial board that we are. I think that is appropriate. We have a very strict set of guidelines for which we can make recommendations. And if it is all holds barred that we can make recommendations on anything, I don't think that's council. We are appointed by council. We are not elected by the citizens. So I think we need the guidelines, and I think that is appropriate.
Got it. Okay, cool. Bill, I do have a follow-up in the same area for you. If you are cool. If you need a water or something, just go do it. But I wanted to follow up with you as well. You're applying for a board that we're going to be asking for feedback on around a lot of policies under the moratorium, while concurrently leading an effort to overturn the moratorium. And I just want to also call out, I hear you saying that you don't feel heard or like you have a seat at the table in that discussion, and that others in the development community don't. And I just want to assure you that it's really important to us that you do have that seat. And so outside of this, we're really going to try to create that and really be there to listen. That said, let's assume you're doing these roles of fighting the tool and being asked to work on the policy inside of it. Talk me through how that works for you.
Well, thanks for both those questions, Skippy. They're both thoughtful and insightful. I'm going to touch on the one that you asked, Teresa, I just can't fathom why the five of you would not want to solicit the advice of the great members of the community that you have on planning and zoning while you're undertaking this effort. I mean, with all due respect, the people on P&Z have infinitely more experience in matters relating to development and planning and zoning than the five of you do, infinitely more. So, I don't know every detail of all of your backgrounds, but as to the extent that I do know them, I believe that's true. And I think that that's a resource that you're privileged to have and you should use. So whether I'm on the board or not, I would really hope that City Council would actively solicit the opinions of those in planning and zoning to help make these major policy changes and very impactful policy changes. Secondly, Skippy, the reason I am applying for this is because I haven't had a seat at the table, and I'm trying to get a seat at the table. And I wish I had a seat at the table. So did so many others in the community, prior to you enacting this moratorium, because I think a lot of the concerns could have been addressed without inflicting the pain on the community that has been inflicted. And I know there are many who disagree with me that there's no pain being experienced, but I can tell you firsthand, I've experienced some and others have too. And my efforts are very complementary. I believe that serving on planning and zoning will help represent a voice at the table that may not be there today or isn't there in the way that I hear it in my own head. And my efforts on this petition drive are to get the community that is not active for whatever reason, maybe it's self-inflicted, maybe it's not, but to have our voices heard too. And I don't think the five of you are hearing the segment of the population that I am.
Got it. I appreciate it. Thank you guys both for that. And you know, Bill, just as a side note, however the petition drive goes, we are interested from hearing from all the people that are signing it. And if those are people that we have failed to reach and you're able to help bring them into our process in any way, we'd really invite that.
That's what I'm doing here.
Thanks, Gibby. Teresa?
Thanks, Tori. I just wanted to say, they do ask us. It's just, we don't write, like they ask for our opinion, they ask for our recommendations, and that is specifically written as one of the duties, it's duty number 2 of Planning and Zoning Commission. I believe that staff does a really good job of eliciting our opinion within the purview. We review it within the purview and the guidelines of P&Z responsibilities. It is a very specific and limited set of review criteria that we have to review anything in front of us against. And they do ask us, and we spend hours and hours in these meetings giving our opinion. And I believe that council has read all of our comments and they have come back and they have specifically asked us for stuff. So I do commend them on asking us the questions, and staff does a phenomenal job reaching out to our board and making sure that changes to the code and, you know, especially huge amendments are brought to us in a manner that we can give our recommendations.
Thanks, Steve. Council, further questions? This is P&Z. Any further questions?
Yeah, let me shoot one more out there. Try to get on a different topic. Thank you. How do you guys feel about the urban growth boundary in the community plan? And that's an urban growth boundary for housing. Should that be maintained or not?
Teresa, we'll start with you on this one.
I have conflicting thoughts, and just for myself on this, I have asked myself the same questions because of the work that I do, whether the urban growth boundary is in the appropriate place. I usually come to, it seems to be, but I come to it from a different perspective of the county gives some pretty big floor area bonuses for those developments that border on the urban growth boundary. So from my my professional standpoint, it's in the right place because our clients really like it. So it's hard for me, and I don't know where it is in every place in the county. So I can't say I know if it should be expanded or reduced, but it seems to be appropriate at this time.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. And I'm talking about the urban growth boundary around Aspen, obviously. And thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm a little confused by the question, and maybe Teresa knows the specifics of this better than me, but my understanding is that this pertains more to the county than the city. I would say I think the concept of an urban growth boundary is a good thing. I think the majority of the impact of it today isn't that relevant on areas outside of it, because everything we're doing inside of it is infill for the most part nowadays. But maybe I'm misunderstanding the question on.
Yeah, no, it's an agreed upon boundary between both the city and the county as part of the Aspen area community plan. The housing boundary with the first community plan in 1993 actually went all the way down to and included Woody Creek and Aspen Village. but that boundary was pulled back to just the airport at the next. And so again, as we try to fulfill housing goals and make sure our business community has a workforce and housekeepers for all the other needs, we are forced to build within these boundaries, and then you end up with taller, denser buildings where you can afford it. So I was just kind of wondering.
I'm certainly supportive of being more creative with locations for affordable housing, and would welcome if that's the lever that you could push to expand the ability or the availability of sites where you could create more affordable housing opportunities, then I'm all for looking at it from that perspective.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you both very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. One of the duties of PNC is relates directly to the GMQS allotments. And I'm curious how both of you feel about the GMQS. If it is it too big, too small? What would your advice be on GMQS allotments?
Go, Bill, and then Teresa.
Well, in my 12 years of experience building homes and amongst other things in Aspen, it's not something that I've run up against, which means that there's not really a ceiling to it, even in these busy times. So I think it's an ineffective program today. I don't feel that it's really the government's responsibility to meter the pace of residential infill development, though. For the most part, I think that the thing to focus on is building the type of things that are appropriate for the community. So I don't think it's a wildly effective program as it stands today, but I'm also not super passionate about the concept of it either.
So if I may follow up on that, Bill, so I don't mean to put words in your mouth, but I thought I heard you saying that you don't feel that it's the government's place to put boundaries on growth.
No, that's not what I said. I think, Ward, there's a lot of misunderstanding on growth, and the large majority of the construction that's happening that people confuse with growth is infill construction. It's replacing old buildings with new buildings. And maybe I'm putting words in your mouth, and if so, I apologize. But I think there's a big misunderstanding of the difference between construction and refurbishment and growth. And I do not believe that it's the community's responsibility to meter the pace of construction on replacing old buildings and improving living conditions and commercial experiences and things like that. I do not believe that's true. But when it pertains to growth, are we making major changes? Like, for example, the lumberyard project, which will bring new citizens to Aspen and will bring new residents to Aspen that do not live here today. They will move up from elsewhere. That is new population growth. That's something that needs to be carefully considered.
Yeah, I heard you on that the first time around, and I agreed that workforce housing it does have impacts on infrastructure, on flushing toilets and the amount of electricity that has to be delivered and all of those issues. And I tend to agree with you, but I want to hear Teresa comment. The GMQS doesn't seem to do what it was designed to do many years ago.
So in the, 4 years I've been on P&Z, I believe we've had one request for GMQS allotment, and that was for the Lift 1 development. So I don't feel like if it was doing what it was intended, my thoughts are that we would see more applications for it in front of P&Z. From, my professional work, the only time I really run into it is when we are trying to build in the county and they have very, specific guidelines of if you go above floor area, you have to buy TDRs or get a GMQS allotment. The easiest way around that is to buy TDRs instead of get a GMQS allotment, so is it working? I would say it needs to be revisited. Do I believe in the goal behind it? Yes. like I said, in 4 years, we've had one request for it. So
Thank you both for your philosophical viewpoints on that. And I appreciate your view, Bill.
Thanks, guys.
John, did you have any questions for P&Z?
I did have some, but they've all been answered. Wanted to thank both Teresa and Bill for applying for the position. Thanks.
Thanks, John. I guess real quickly, Bill, I've just got one question for you. It's hard to think of you in your position as a developer, as somebody that brings a perspective that is community-based to P&Z. And I very much look at our land use codes as something that are in place for community. And that means both, developers, builders, et cetera, but also the community. What could you say to me or to fellow council members to just address that? I mean, obviously, we're the moratorium, your opposition to that, organizing a petition, this, that, and the other. What could you say to us to make us either comfortable or explain yourself or just address that as a concern?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that question, Tori. Thanks. I think, first of all, it has to be understood that me and others that have sort of similar profiles to me, and I'm not just a developer, I own multiple other businesses in Aspen. I've started a restaurant that I focused on sort of the average Aspen resident and visitor, as you know, Tori, with that express goal, not to appeal only to the ultra wealthy or anything. That's something that I've done, and I chose to do specifically because I do value community. But back to my point, just because I'm a developer doesn't make me evil, okay? And I think there's a terrible bias in this community amongst a lot of people that somehow being involved in the development industry makes you hate this community. I choose to live here. I too sacrifice to live in this community. I have chosen to have 3 children in this community and raise my children with my wife in this community. I love Aspen with all of my heart, and I would do anything to stay to live here. I don't want to go anywhere else. I value every bit of what makes Aspen Aspen. I am a champion of affordable housing because I think without it and without a well-managed, sustainable program, we're nothing. This community will fall to pieces. I've been to every other mountain town in Colorado, and it's nothing like Aspen. And a big part of the reason that I've deduced is because we have people of all economic strata that can afford to live here. Okay, and we can't fulfill everybody's desire to live in Aspen. That's impossible. The desire is infinite. But having a quilt and a fabric that's made up of different types of people, economically, sociologically, demographically, is so critical. And I love Aspen. Everyone that I know, including all these wealthy people, whatever that means, that are targeted for not liking Aspen, and developers and real estate agents and everything else that get all this flack. Every one of us loves Aspen just as much as people without as much money in their pocket might. And I personally feel that the vilification of people who work in certain professions and the words that are put in our mouth that we don't value the community of Aspen is insulting and couldn't be further from the truth. I really, really love it here. I understand the decisions that have been made over the years. While they're not always the best decisions, the end result is an amazing community that I'm proud to be part of.
Thanks, Bill. I appreciate that answer from you. Really great answer. And I'm really glad that I asked that of you and gave you that opinion, that opportunity. I would clear up 2 things that just from me. Number one, I don't look at developers as all evil. I do think that there are some that, pursue money over what's maybe best for a community. No problem with that. But I really, and I agree with you. I don't think we should be typifying or categorizing anybody as evil in that sense. So I totally agree with you there, that is inappropriate. But the other thing I wanted to, something you said in the beginning is that you and others that are maybe in your industry feel unheard and such. And I just want to let you know, 100% from this seat right here, I can tell you you're heard. You're not only heard, but you're also you're heard, and your input is valued, and you're taken into account in decision making from me. So
I appreciate that, Tori, but it's not true. I mean, if we were heard properly, we would have been involved in a decision that is so impactful on our industry, and you would have valued our opinion up front. So I disagree with you there. I want you to hear that coming from my mouth. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I strongly disagree with that.
I appreciate it. We probably disagree on more than just that, so it's okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Bill.
And here I thought it was only politicians who were vilified, hated, and considered idiots.
We're not alone. Thank you, Bill. Thank you, Teresa.
Bill.
Thank you guys so much. We'll be in touch when we make the appointments and let you guys know as soon as possible. Thank you.
For your time.
Thank you, Bill.
Yes.
Bye.
Council, I know it's late. We got one more. Let's try to get through this last one. This is the Wheeler board that we have to be interviewing. The Wheeler board has 3 regular member openings. We have got 1, 2, 3, 4. We've got 5 people that have signed up. We may be losing one, and we'll reschedule that because we also have another one that can't make it as well. So we've got 3, maybe 4, but we may have to do another round for this. So let's get to it if we can. We had Tim Sack. I don't know if he's still here with us or not. Tim might be with us. We've got Daniel Benevent. Do I have that right?
That's correct.
Yep, Benevent. And we've got Amy Mountjoy is joining us. She's here with us already. And then Richard Stetner. Richard was on as well. I don't know if he had to drop off, but like I said, we will reschedule as appropriate. Amy is a current member. Richard is also a current member. Tim, Alex, and Daniel are new applicants. So to Daniel and Amy who are with us, Amy, obviously I know from you that you know the meeting schedule, 1 Wednesday a month at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Daniel, I need to check with you. Are you aware of the meeting schedule, and is that any problem or conflict for you?
No, I've been calling in for a couple of years.
Okay, thank you. I'll open it up to council members now. Questions? We are talking about the Wheeler Advisory Board. Council members. Start out of order. John, you got any questions or comments for these two?
Nothing off the top of my head, just glad that Amy's still willing to be on the board and pleased that Daniel's already been involved for the last 2 years. That gives me confidence that we have 2 good candidates right here.
Thank you, John.
Yeah, Tori, I think I would just ask, what do you think you bring to the Wheeler board in particular? And is there anything you feel is missing from the Wheeler board or their approach on issues?
Let's start with Daniel and then Amy.
Sure, there certainly is space for more technical and production input. We have some really strong members there, but there's always more information that can be delivered when it comes to upgrading our technical capacity, when it comes to producing work in the space, and also when it comes to the long-term planning of the programming.
Okay, thank you. And what do you think you bring to the board?
I've spent my entire career working in performing arts, and a lot of that has been as a producer and a presenter, which is definitely a skill set that can be brought into this advisory board, especially as it's under new leadership, how we are getting out there and acquiring new talent to present at the Wheeler. I can definitely be helpful in that. And also just having an extensive network within the industry of performing arts across the nation, and making sure that we are up to industry protocols and not having to reinvent the wheel every time we encounter a snafu.
Thank you.
Amy?
I would like to support Daniel in his, I gotta take this off.
Yeah.
Sorry, trying to do too many things at once and hearing a delay in my ear while I'm doing the broadcast. I agree with Daniel in trying to create industry-wide standards. We've been trying to push for that with in this new COVID and post-COVID era. So absolutely staying on top of what's happening nationally and internationally is great. What I specifically bring to the board, something we, or at least I personally have been focusing on with the closure and reopening, is focusing more on how we can support the local arts community, and not just in allowing stage time to put on a play, but how else can we be helpful? If we are closed again for an extended period of time, or even a short period of time, and can't host big events, what else can we do for the community with the space, with the technical capacity? There's so much in that building and that we can do to help the community, that I think that that is a big way that we can help. And in maintaining those kinds of connections with the people that we do know and the arts groups locally and regionally, I think that's a really great thing to focus on at this point in time.
Thank you.
Any follow-up? Ward, Skippy?
I'll jump in. I mean, what do you guys, I mean, just for you personally, what do you think the ideal programming mix and frequency is for the Wheeler?
I would stack it full, if you're asking me, and I would have a really broad variety. However, I would stack it after I've slotted in all the local performing arts opportunities. I definitely feel that they have a priority, and that they never get what they quite want or need. They never have enough time in the space. There are plenty of other opportunities and groups that we could be featured there. But then after that, I think the sky is the limit, whether it's children's programming on weekend mornings, or it's Aspen Day Ski Week, having the drag show or whatever, there's anything, the sky's the limit. I mean, I remember the New Year's Eve things, and then also like the Aspen, was it Historical Society lectures, that's a great space, whether you're talking about the main hall or the lobby. There's so much that can be done in those, that it's a pity if it's not being used consistently.
Cool.
Amy?
I would like to see more of the really huge live events that used to happen. Years ago, there were such events like, I think it was CBS that took over Aspen and had events on the mountain and all around town and broadcast from the Wheeler. I think that, especially with bringing the super high dollar residents to town, that we can and should support throwing some events in there like we had been building towards years ago. The Wheeler can support it, the city can support it, the town can definitely make space for it and have a great time. So, as well as getting all the local art groups in there, I think we do and should strive towards having something really big and sparkly like that once in a while again.
Thank you guys.
Thanks, Skippy.
Thanks for hanging in with us.
Yeah. Ward?
Yeah, I can't help but feel that Groundhog's Day here. We shut it down, we ramp it up, we shut it down. I'm so ready to be over this, but the flexibility and the leadership that the Wheeler Board and Lisa have brought, I'm respectful of that, and I'm not sure what the proper level of programming is. I think there needs to be some dark nights, and I think there needs to be a mix, local and bright and shiny things, Amy. And Amy, thank you for being able to multitask here and hear the same thing at two different times. So I'm just appreciative. I know that we have a couple of people that applied that could not be here. I think Richard was here and had to leave at 6. And Daniel, I don't know if you were here earlier, but we had some technical difficulties. We lost some time, but you've probably watched enough city council meetings to know that we go long anyway. But I appreciate, Amy, your willingness to serve again, and Daniel, what you can bring is valued. So the question is that you as a board are going to have to work out is how you decide what the proper level of programming in the mix of that is.
Thanks, Ward. Yeah, I want to say thank you as well. Again, I've been sitting in on the Wheeler board for the last couple of years, and along with Ward. And so, Amy, I want to say thank you so much for your service and what you bring to the board. It's been very noticeable and very present. So thank you for that. And Daniel, I don't often have an applicant that really makes me think about the replacing or bringing somebody new in, but you definitely have a great perspective and a great attitude about it. So if you are to get appointed, I feel really great with you being there. So thank you so much for applying today.
It'd be my pleasure.
Thank you. Amy?
Yeah, I'd just like to add that with this time of us being having all the remote meetings and all that, I've seen that Daniel has been at a lot of the meetings, and I'd like to suggest that since we are all virtual and have been, and looks like we will be for a little while still, the members of the public, that a lot of people have interest, please do log in and sit through the meetings as Daniel has and see what goes on and see what we talk about. It's helpful. They're all open to the public, so please do participate if you would like to. And with everything happening this year, post-COVID, and the new facade getting all touched up and fixed, it's very exciting. We're looking forward to the video coming out of that. I'm super excited about that. And with the new granting structure, there's so much going on. It's a really exciting time to peek behind the curtain as it is and see how things get done.
Thank you, Amy. Thank you to both of you. Appreciate you both. We'll be in touch soon when we start making appointments. But like I said, we had a couple people that couldn't stay on the meeting this long, so we will get back to them and give them an opportunity to interview with us.
Thank you.
Thank you, Daniel. Thank you, Amy.
Thanks very much.
All right. Hey, council, that is the end of our agenda this evening. Apologies for going until 7:30. I did not recognize that all of these boards were coming through tonight. I thought we were spacing them out. So I'll make a note to better arrange for our interviews, as we are always conscientious about their time as well as ours. So anyway, we'll see you all tomorrow at 5 p.m. Have a wonderful, wonderful evening.
Thanks so much.
Bye for now.
Bye, all. Yeah. All right. I'll see you tomorrow at 5.
See you tomorrow at 5.
Bye.